All right, Chris. Now, in its 8th season, it's the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. Tonight, from Anaheim, it's the new-look Cleveland Indians featuring slugger Matt Williams taking on the Angels and Tim Salmon. It's the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. Last night, Cleveland's new talent was on display. Matt Williams hit this double, keying a 4-run fifth-inning rally. Then Kevin Mitchell in the 6th inning hit a booming home run off the back wall of the new bullpen. Finally, in the 8th inning, David Justice went deep. Cleveland won the ball game 7-5 to even the series at a game apiece. Hello, everyone. John Miller from Anaheim. Welcome to our 8th season of ESPN's Sunday Night Baseball. Tonight, the Anaheim Angels and the Cleveland Indians. The powerful Cleveland Indians, although with many new faces in the ball club, including the great third baseman, formerly of the Giants, Matt Williams. My partner, Joe Morgan, met with him on the field during batting practice.
Matty, you were a member of the 1989 San Francisco Giants when Kevin Mitchell was the most valuable player in the league. How is he swinging the bat now compared to then?
Well, he's got 3 homers. And doing pretty well. He's hitting 8th in our lineup, which is kind of odd for him, but driving in runs and playing well. He hadn't played in the outfield yet. He's been DHing, but he'll get a chance to do that too, so he's doing great.
3 other National Leaguers have come over here with you to Cleveland. How is that going to help you adjust to your new surroundings?
Well, we try to pick as many brains as we can, as a group, I think, to try to find out what these guys throw if we don't know them. Fortunately, there's some guys here from the National League that we have a clue about, but the majority of them, we've got to have, a little videotape, a little brain picking session to try to get a clue.
And just like that, he's back upstairs here with me, Joe Morgan, Matt Williams' close personal friend. Now, we know Cleveland can hit. All those guys can slug the ball. How is the pitching going to be? Tonight, Jack McDowell makes his first start of the year, and he is so very important to the success of this staff.
Well, I think he's the key to this staff, John. And this is a turning point season for Jack McDowell. He's had injuries the last couple of years. He even had an injury in spring training. He's going to have to prove to the Indians right away that he's going to reestablish himself as one of the best pitchers in the American League. And he's going to have his good splitter tonight, or he's going to have a problem with the Angels. All
right, McDowell will be facing Tim Salmon, Jim Edmonds, and all of those Anaheim Angels. It's our 8th season of Sunday Night Baseball. Stay tuned. Looking at Anaheim Stadium, which currently is being rebuilt. It's a work in progress. A beautiful, sunshiny Sunday afternoon, and it's our debut telecast of the 1997 edition of ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Mike Hargrove, his Cleveland Indians have won 2 consecutive divisional titles, although they were upset in the first round last year by the Baltimore Orioles. And now he's got quite a different-looking lineup. Let's take a look at the starting lineup for Cleveland, brought to you by Pepsi. Marquise Grissom, formerly of the Braves, in center field. Omar Vizquel is at shortstop. Jim Thome, still here, but now at first base. Matt Williams, formerly with the San Francisco Giants, hits cleanup at third base. David Justice, remember, he was the one who drove in the winning run for the Braves against the Indians in the final game of the 1995 World Series. Now he's with Cleveland in left field. Kevin Mitchell, one-time National League MVP. He's got 3 home runs already. He's the DH. He's moved up in the order because he's so hot, I guess. It will be Brian Giles in right field hitting 7th as Manny Ramirez gets the night off. And Tony Fernandez, the veteran, who replaces Julio Franco at 2nd, and Sandy Alomar, who's also hot right now, is the catcher. On the mound for the California Angels, a veteran, formerly of the Kansas City Royals, 34-year-old right-hander, Mark Gubicza. And then you get a look at the new Angels duds for 1997 as well. We asked Mark Gubicza to describe his pitching repertoire for us.
This is where I hold my fastball. I like to keep it in this way so I can work on the sinker, keep it away from the left-handers and run it in on the right-handers. Here I just move it up a little bit further up for my slider to get all the seams to rotate at the same time. And as far as my changeup, I just basically keep everything all in the same grip, to split my finger here a little bit off the seams and move my thumb up a little bit.
And Mark Gubicza is very different from the Mark Gubicza that started with Kansas City. He used to be a power pitcher. Now he's become more of a sinker, slider, changeup pitcher, and he has not been throwing very hard, but he's going to have a good enough fastball if he can keep these hitters honest. And let's take a look at the defense for the California Angels. I think the big change there will be Darren Erstats is over at first base. Erstats at first base, whereas he was an outfielder before when he was made the #1 draft choice, but he's adapted pretty well so far.
The Anaheim Angels, no longer called the California Angels, which never seemed to be quite right in a state that had 5 major league teams.
I agree with you.
So now they are the Anaheim Angels. There's Darren Erstat, and he is now at first base, an erstwhile outfielder. Darren Erstat.
Okay.
How's that?
I got you.
Yeah, I worked on that all winter.
And it didn't float past me either.
I'm 1 for 1.
Okay.
Here's Marquise Grissom to lead it off for the Cleveland Indians. Now, Cleveland has had a real wild ride out here in the West Coast. 2 games in Oakland and 2 so far here in Anaheim. They've won 2 and lost 2, but every game has been a wild adventure. They've blown leads. They've made silly defensive mistakes. Julio Franco even had one, a veteran, where on ball 3, he thought it was ball 4 and started to trot over to second base and got thrown out. He was looking up at the scoreboard and saw Oakland had 3 runs and thought that meant 3 balls, looking at the wrong column. So they've had everything that could happen to a team, including losing here Friday night in the 11th inning on a grand slam by Tim Salmon. So Cleveland would like to get out of here with a win tonight, and they would consider themselves fortunate. Here is Gubicza's first pitch, and he starts off with a slider to Marquise Grissom, and it is 0-1. Gubicza came up in that crop of Kansas City pitchers back in the 80s, and there's strike 2, along with Brett Saberhagen, Danny Jackson. A little bit later, David Cohn came along, and there was a time when it seemed like the Royals had a lock on young pitching talent. In those days, he was really a hard thrower. Man, he strikes out Marquise Grissom on 3 pitches.
I think he had a little help there, John. It's very difficult to see at this point because the sun is behind the pitcher, yet it's dark at home plate. And here is a fastball that he's going to have to use. He threw him a couple of breaking balls to get ahead in the count. Now he throws a fastball up and out of the strike zone, and that's what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to use this fastball as his out pitch after he gets ahead.
Omar Vizquel, and he takes up and in with a breaking ball, 1 ball and no strikes. Now up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen there, you see where the count lists 1-0. That will also always read out the Jugs gun reading. There we go, 79 miles an hour. So we'll have the radar gun reading on every pitch. We'll give you the count. When men reach base, keep track of them up there on that little item as well. That's caught by Garret Anderson. He robs Vizquel of a base hit.
Every time I've watched Garret Anderson play, he seems to get better and better. He gets a pretty good jump on the ball, but he has such a long stride. He covers a lot of ground. He doesn't look like he's really flying out there, but he is. He's covering a lot of ground. I thought this ball was a base hit, but he had it all the way. Nice play by Garret.
It's kind of a ball you see a lot of guys go into a slide.
Right. Well, he
try and catch. But he just reached down and caught it. I was like you. I thought I was about to say base hit. 2 down. Here's Jim Thome. Big, strong, left-handed slugger. 38 home runs last year. And the fastball, you see that sinking fastball, 81 miles an hour by Gubicza. That's what Joe was talking about earlier. This guy has reworked his whole game.
Yeah, but I think 80 is not enough. You're going to have to get a little bit more than that. Because you throw a 72-mile-an-hour changeup, 75-mile-an-hour slider, you're going to need a little more difference in your speeds. You're going to need the fastball a little higher up to make those guys jump at it.
And the count goes to 2-1. Now, Gubicza, making his first start of the year, he got hurt this spring. He was running on a wet field just in the outfield before the game. Slipped and fell and jammed his pitching shoulder, sort of in the back of the shoulder. And fastball, again, 81 miles an hour outside. Ball 3. Matt Williams on deck. There's Terry Collins, the new manager, formerly of the Astros, trying to bring some of his fiery emotion to this Angels ball club that was said that they were too laid back last year. There's ball 4, so Thome is aboard. And now Matt Williams, another former National Leaguer, coming to the plate. Matt had a very emotional time this past week at the end of the exhibition schedule, because Cleveland played two games at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And, of course, that's where he had played his whole career. He did not want to leave San Francisco. And he got a huge ovation from the fans there last Sunday before his first at bat. They just wouldn't let him bat. They kept cheering so long. But now Matt trying to go about the business of getting it done here in a new league with a new team. 0-1 the count. Good slider.
The one thing about Gubazar, he can go through the lineup maybe the first time throwing a lot of sliders, change-ups, and not having a good fastball. But the second time around, these hitters are going to adjust. That's why you need to have a fastball good enough to keep them honest.
Yeah, when you say these hitters, I mean especially these hitters.
These the real hitters. Because what's going to happen is they'll just say, well, if you can't throw a fastball by me, I'll start to look for the off-speed stuff, and I can still handle a fastball. There are a lot of hitters who can look for the off-speed pitch if you're not throwing hard enough and still hit your fastball.
Well, they got him chasing that pitch again. 2 sliders, 2 strikes. It's 0-2.
I think the toughest part right now, John, is to pick up the spin on the breaking ball, on the slider, because, again, it's very bright out in center field, and then it comes into the darkness. You can see the shadows there. In order to hit the slider or the curveball, you need to be able to see the rotation, and it's very difficult to pick up the rotation at this point of the game.
Miles an hour on that one. 1 ball and 2 strikes. About the fastest one we've seen is about 81 miles an hour from Gubazar. Now you got to look at that last pitch sort of from the point of view of Matt Williams. You can see how just real tough it is to see the ball, as Joe has been mentioning. Here, we'll take a look at it again. That bright background.
It's almost impossible to see the stitches on the ball, to see the rotation when you're hitting in this type of sunlight.
1 ball and 2 strikes. 2 down. David Justice is on deck. He would be next. Matt Williams, very dangerous. He was chasing Ruth and Maris in 1994 before the strike hit. He had 43 home runs that year in just a little over 2/3 of a season. In the last 2 seasons, he was hit with injuries. At shortstop, DeSarcina, and the put out at second for Alicea on Tommy. Matt Williams hits into a forced. Cleveland is retired. The Angels are coming up. Erstad will lead it off. We'll be back. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball from Southern California. John Miller, Joe Morgan here with you. No score as the Angels get ready to bat. Terry Collins, fiery former manager of the Houston Astros, and hoping that he'll be able to inject a little bit more life into this Angels clubhouse in 1997. Right alongside Eddie Murray, veteran DH there. It'll be for the Angels in their lineup, brought to you by Pepsi. Darren Erstad, who had 4 hits last night at first base. Luis Alicea, second base. Jim Edmonds in center field. Tim Salmon, the hero on Friday, right field. Dave Hollins at third base. Garret Anderson, left field. The 500 home run man, Murray, the DH. Jim Leyritz, one of the World Series heroes with the Yankees last year. The catcher, Gary DeSarcina, is the shortstop. And on the mound, the veteran right-hander, one-time Cy Young Award winner, Black Jack McDowell.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, in his heyday, he was as good as any pitcher in any league. Well, Jack's going to have his good splitter working tonight. It's going to have to be exploding a little bit in order for him to be successful.
Erstad shows bunt, takes, strike 1 call.
Well, Jack will be able to throw hard enough to keep the hitters honest, but he needs that splitter to get them to chase some pitches out of the strike zone.
Fastball, changeup, and a forkball. 89 miles an hour. That's not too bad there for Jack McDowell. 1 ball, 1 strike. Now, he had an abdominal muscle strain in the spring that sent him back a little bit, but he pitched in a simulated game last Monday, pronounced himself fit and ready to go. Inside for a ball. 2 balls and a strike. Now, last year he had a little forearm strain that kept him from throwing his curveball, and really affected him adversely. And he tried to pitch through it, but just wasn't effective, particularly the second half of the year. Justice is back. Off his glove. Erstad is in at second.
I don't know if we'll get a good view of this, but This is what happens when a left-handed hitter hits the ball to left field. Remember, Justice played right field mostly in his Atlanta career. But when a left-handed hitter slices the ball starts in left center. Now watch the ball curve back behind Justice. See, the ball is curving away from him, and that's why he was not able to make the play. See, he thought the ball was hit, and it was hit toward left center field, so he started that way, but then the ball got out there, and it really started to curve back, and it becomes a slice from a left-hander, and it made it difficult for Justice there.
Runner at second. They score that as a double for Erstad, his third of the year. Palisade trying to get him over to third now with the power coming up next. Jim Edmonds is on deck. No score in the game. Well, with Justice coming here, he's always been a right fielder, basically. So those will be some things he'll have to adjust to in a new position. And he did not get the spring to do it, as would ordinarily be the case. Played right field for the Braves until he got traded with just maybe a week or so to go in the springtime. Well, that'll get the job done. Matt Williams throws him out. First down over to third. One of the ball game was still going on until just a moment ago. Linda Cohn now with the update.
Thanks. Yeah, the Seattle Mariners and Red Sox need extra innings to decide it. Paul Sorrento playing hero with a base hit off Rick Trilichik with a bases loaded drive, and Alex Rodriguez with a game-winning run. Norm Charlton got the winning relief. Gentlemen.
All right, Linda, thank you. And for Norm Charlton, some retribution, because last night he gave it up in the ninth inning at the Kingdome. Here is Jim Edmonds. The infield is in already. Mike Hargrove, even with all of his power, all of that run-scoring ability, he's bringing the infield in with a power hitter up in the very first inning.
Well, and it's difficult to play the infield in when you have the likes of Edmonds and Salmon to follow, but I think what he's counting on is Jack McDowell keeping the ball down, using the sinker and the splitter in this situation, or the forkball, to keep the ball on the infield.
Fastball to the inside. Edmonds backing off, but it's called a strike by Dale Scott, the home plate umpire. Edmonds has not done well against McDowell. A lot of guys haven't done well against McDowell over the years. Check swing foul. 1 ball and 2 strikes now. Jim Edmonds, very powerful the last couple of years. He has established himself as a fine center fielder who can hit the long ball. 30 home runs and 100 RBI, or 107 RBIs 2 years ago. Last year he missed a good deal of time with injury. Still hit 27 homers. First down at third. That's foul off the left field side into the second deck. 1 ball and 2 strikes.
See, that's the difference right there between McDowell and Gubaza. See, McDowell can throw the fastball with 2 strikes to keep you honest and then try to get you to chase something else. He has a good enough fastball that he can challenge any hitter on this Angels ball club.
Up and in with a fastball. 2 balls, 2 strikes. And the hitters always seem to have that sort of a fear in the back of their head about a guy who can throw that split-fingered pitch, that forkball.
And you're always waiting so you won't chase it. And if a guy has a good enough fastball, you have to commit a little quicker than you want.
2-2 the count. And that will keep the runner at third. Sandy Alomar knocking that one down as it rolled up the first base side.
Well, he had thrown him a couple of fastballs in, and that was the one that he wanted to finish him off with, the splitter, but he did not get it close enough that Edmonds would bite.
Full count now, 3-2.
Interesting, the last couple of days they walked Edmonds a couple of times on Friday night to get to Tim Salmon. He finally made him pay for it, but that was a Cleveland strategy.
And a foul. And that was Edmonds just trying to fight off a tough pitch there, which he did. 3 balls, 2 strikes. Salmon is on deck.
That swing tells you that he was protecting against the forkball or splitter, because all he was doing was spoiling the fastball in that situation.
We had a hockey game breaking out there at third base for a moment. Larry Boa and Jim Thome kidding around. Deep into right center. Giles didn't see it. Doesn't matter. Home run! 2-0 California.
to give Edmonds credit here, John, because McDowell made some good pitches, and he even had him off balance with the fastball the pitch before, so he figured he could come back with another one, but Edmonds just speeds his bat up, gets that pitch, and just drives it out of here.
Now Tim Salmon. Fastball in there for a strike. 2-0 for the Angels, the second home run of the year for Jim Edmonds. Hit it out into right center near that 370 marker out there. Giles didn't see it at first, but then it became sort of academic as the ball sailed right out of the ballpark. 1 ball, 1 strike. Jim Edmonds, talking with Rod Carew, the great hitters of his time or any time, and Edmonds really swears by the gospel according to Rodney when it comes to hitting.
Kind of typical to me of home runs the last couple of years, in that the ball will take off, you're not sure it's going out of here, but it just continues to carry and carry. And a lot of it has to do with the strength of the players now, and I believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're playing with 100 compression titleists every once in a while.
2 balls, 2 strikes. The wind is blowing out. Now Tim Salmon says that especially when it gets dark and the sun goes down and gets a little cooler here at night, that the ball no longer carries as well in this ballpark between the 370s from right center to left center as it did when the ballpark was enclosed. Salmon is down on strikes on the fastball.
Well, when they had the big A out there in center field, that's the way the ball was, the way the ball carried it before. It did not carry well, I should say. Take a look at the defensive alignment for the Cleveland Indians. Matt Williams over at third base now. Tommy, as you know, played third base last year. Now he's at first base. Matt Williams is the Gold Glove winner in the National League and one of the best fielding third basemen in all of baseball.
2 down, 2 in for the Angels, and here is Dave Hollins. And that's ball 1. Hollins, who was in the 1993 World Series with the Phillies. A lot of injury problems. His career was stalled. Last year started with the Twins and didn't do all that well with Minnesota. Then went to Seattle at the tail end of the year, and he got red hot with the Mariners and ended up with 78 RBIs for the year. Now the Angels picked him up. There's the overall figure for last year. Always been a pretty good RBI man. And they also, with Terry Collins here now as manager, they like the fact that this guy seems to be one of those real intense type competitors. 2-1 the count. Collins a switch hitter. That one is down the right field line. It is foul. 2-2. Well, what happened to that one? That wasn't a titleist?
What happened? Hey, he got that one off the heel of the bat. That one jammed him a lot.
Well, I thought you were saying, though, that it didn't matter.
No,
you don't hit them well, and they go.
You still have to get a little wood on it.
2-2 the count to Dave Hollins. That's yours, Joe. Look out. That came dangerously close, Joe.
Yes, but I'm glad the young fella down there got a souvenir and not us.
Joe, show him your form on that one. Yeah. And a little dribbler foul off to the right. 2 balls, 2 strikes the count to Dave Hollins. I guess those big red machine days are over.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Had a glove there as well.
You were going to dive for that one. Instead, you took a dive. There's a base hit. Third hit of the inning. Of course, if you're Jack McDowell, you go back to the very first bat of the inning, Erstad, who hit a ball that was catchable but was not caught. And that's a question about this Cleveland club, which is how strong defensively are they going to be.
Good hitting there by Hollins. He has never been a strictly pull hitter as such. He'll slap the ball around, and that pitch was blowing away, and he lined it to left field. Good hitting there. But you're right, defensively is going to be a test. The defense is going to be a test for the Cleveland Indians this year.
Here's Garret Anderson. On the one hand, he's off to a very hot start, except when you look sort of in between the numbers, maybe it's not that hot. He's 8 for 18, a 444 average, which is excellent. But all 8 of his hits have been singles. There's only 1 RBI. Well, he may rectify that one way back there. It's gone. His first extra base hit of the season. 4-0 California.
There's one of those titleists. That was a line drive.
2-run homer for Anderson, putting the Anaheim Angels up by 4.
This is a fastball, and this is a mistake. This is a fastball right out over the plate for Garret Anderson, and he just hit a line drive off the Western Division champion sign there. And I think he's saying to himself, I've made a mistake. And I mean, he realizes that was not where he was supposed to throw that pitch.
I think he was saying it in Greek. Mark Wiley, the pitching coach, having visited with Jack McDowell. 4-0 for the Angels. 2 2-run homers in the inning. And now the 500 home run man comes up, Eddie Murray. Eddie joining Hank Aaron and Willie Mays is the only 500 home run men who also had 3,000 hits. Just the 3 of them. A very select club there. 2 magic circles. I mean, to get 500 homers, that's rare. To get 3,000 hits, also very rare. And they'll be back out of play. Of course, Murray, the last couple of years, was with the Cleveland Indians and was given a great deal of credit. Was very much loved by his teammates for bringing that winning atmosphere into their clubhouse, for being a guy who sort of taught them how to win. Murray got there. They went to their first World Series in 41 years, 1995. And then last year, in late July, he was traded to Baltimore. And Cleveland have been making a lot of trades ever since, it seems. Edgar was traded to the Mets. Murray got traded to Baltimore, and then Bell left in the winter. Matt Williams was acquired in a trade. Now Justice and Grissom picked up in a trade. Lofton going to Atlanta. The former Gold Glove shortstop, showing some nice moves at second base to retire Murray. But the Angels with a burst of power. Edmonds and Anderson both go deep. 4-0. David Justice and then Kevin Mitchell coming up. Angels 4, Indians nothing. We head to the second inning. David Justice leads it off against Mark Gubazar. Ball 1. Justice was off to a great start last year before he got hurt. 40 games, he had 6 homers, 25 batted in, and a .321 average. Then he got hurt and missed the rest of the year. World Series hero for the Braves, 1995 against Cleveland. Now here he is with Cleveland.
I've always been a big Dave Justice fan because I think he has one of the purest swings in all of baseball.
He cracks this one high and deep in the right center field. Edmonds is back, and this one is gone. Home run derby here in Anaheim. It's 4-1. Well, Justice has just hit his 3rd home run for his new ball club in 5 games.
Said John, he's got one of the purest swings in all of baseball, and he's look at this, not much effort there, just a nice swing. Now let's take a look at from the side angle. I mean, look at that. There's that Ken Griffey kind of swing there with the stiff front leg, and that's kind of your typical home run hitter from the left side.
Speaking of home run hitters, here is Kevin Mitchell. Mitchell, who had 47 big flies back in 1989 with the Giants, won the MVP award. Now just trying to resurrect his career. Didn't even know he'd made the ball club until after the final exhibition game of the spring. And he got 3 home runs already in 16 at-bats, including a booming shot to left here last night.
Kevin Mitchell is not just a slugger as most people think he is. Kevin Mitchell is a very smart hitter. He makes adjustments at the plate, And, I mean, there's really not any particular way that you can pitch him. I mean, he will make adjustments, and he can hammer the ball in any direction.
It is 2-2 now to Mitchell.
I think you have to really give John Hart of the Cleveland Indians a lot of credit for this team that he's put on the field this year. I mean, he lost Albert Bell. It looked like he might lost, and now he ends up with really one of maybe an even more potent offense than he had last year.
Strike 3 call to the outside. Mitchell thought it was too far outside. Argues a bit with Dale Scott.
The tough thing to do, John, is you sit up there and you take 2 strikes and then argue on the third. It's kind of hard to do that with an umpire. Although, I mean, you can see Kevin feels this ball's outside and he may have an argument, but you can't. Well, yeah, from that angle it looks outside, but you can't take 2 strikes and then argue on the third.
Kevin Mitchell retired, and here is Brian Giles. Giles hit .355 last year after being called up in the second half of the season. Every general manager who called John Hart in regards to a trade said, how about Brian Giles? And, of course, they couldn't get him. Giles is out. Now they just got so much talent on this ball club that Giles is without a job. He's getting his first start tonight just to get him some at-bats. As Manny Ramirez sits down. They also have a guy, Oral Hershiser, said last week, he said, here's a trivia question for you. What hitter hit .326 as an everyday player last year and had 78 RBIs
and doesn't have a job? I know who he is. Kevin Seitzer.
Kevin Seitzer, Oral Hershiser's teammate. There's Oral. Talking it over with Matt Williams.
Well, I think what happens, that's what Matt was talking about in our open today. He said that he's talking to, players like Hershiser and people who've seen the pitchers in the American League, and no better scouting report can you get than from a pitcher.
Here's Tony Fernandez. Thrown out by Alicea. So just the 1 run on the Justice home run. Angels 4 and Cleveland 1. We'll be back. Jim Leyritz has taken ball 1 from Jack McDowell. Leyritz hitting 8th in the order. The former Yankee, former World Series hero. Broken bat with a base hit. A noble death for that bat. Of course, in the World Series, he hit one of the great home runs against Mark Wohlers to tie the ball game. Joe Wohlers hung a slider to him.
John, I think whenever a team is down 2-0 and they come back, it's always one base hit or one pitch that changes the series around. And there's no doubt in my mind that Jim Leyritz's home run changed that series. If he would not have hit that home run, I guarantee the Braves would have won the World Series. But that's what it's all about.
Braves had a 6-0 lead. Yanks cut into it, made it 6-3. Then Wohlers was brought in to pitch the last 2 innings of that game. And he got into some trouble and then hung a slider to Leyritz. And Leyritz launched it. Knew just what to do with it.
Well, Leyritz would say he didn't hang it. He said, I went out and got it. Went out and got it and brought it back.
Well, let's just say it was a little easier to go out and get it because it was hung.
But they didn't have far to go to get it.
Jim Leyritz coming to the Angels with the idea that he'd be the regular everyday catcher, but as things evolved during the spring, it really did not turn out that way. He and George Fabregas, a left-handed hitting catcher, it looks like are going to share the catching chores. DeSarcina base hit. Leyritz will be held at second base as Giles throws all the way through.
Well, if you're Jack McDowell, you're wondering what's going on. I'm throwing the ball pretty well, and that's not a bad pitch. That pitch was away, and just good hitting there by DeSarcina. He goes the other way because there's a hole on the right side. I actually thought Leyritz could have made third base easily, but with no one out, he didn't want to get thrown out at third base.
It looked like he intended to go to third. The stop sign. Here's Darren Erstad, the leadoff man. He doubled off the glove of David Justice to start a 4-run first inning rally. It's a strike. Erstad, 1 for 1. From North Dakota, they did not have a baseball program at his high school, Jamestown, North Dakota. He played football, set the school record for field goal. He played hockey, scored 36 goals in 26 games. And he ran track. And then he played American Legion baseball in the summertime. A lot of great American Legion programs around the country. That's really where he honed his game as a teenager. Down with a 1-on-1 count. Still looks like he's got pretty good pop on the fastball.
Well, he does have good stuff, John. One of the things that happens to pitchers coming out of spring training that may not have had enough work is that they're inconsistent. He'll make one good pitch, two good pitches, and then make a bad pitch. And I think that's what is happening to Jack McDowell so far in this ballgame. And when you're not able to make the pitch that you want to make consistently, you know, you're going to be frustrated a little bit, and maybe sometimes overthrow, and then get the ball in the middle of the plate.
2 balls and a strike. 39 pitches thrown already by McDowell. 6 hits allowed. He's trailing 4-1. The Angels are at the top of the batting order with 2 men on and nobody out. Let's see if Terry Collins plays a little National League ball, sends the runners here, Joe. What do you think?
No.
Aggressive. I want aggressive.
Yeah, but I don't think he knows enough about Erstad yet. Maybe in the middle of June he might do that. I'm sure you remember Terry Collins was in the American National League last year. He's going to go first-hand look at some of these young Angels players. And you can watch them in spring training, but you do not know how they will react once the season starts. And so he's going to have to take some time to learn these players before he starts putting hit and run situations on them.
Just over the head of Williams, base hit. Leyritz will score. DeSarcina to third. It's a double for Erstad. His second double of the game. 5-1 for the Angels. Still nobody out.
Well, again, he's not making all bad pitches. They're just turning out poorly for him. I mean, take a look at this pitch. See, that ball's inside. He's tried, and he fights it off. He actually just hits it off the handle, and he flares it down the left field line. I mean, he didn't hit a line drive there, but it works the same way, and you see Leyritz comes around to score easily. And Erstad's at second base now.
Now, Alicea, switch hitter. He laid down a bunt his first time. High and tight. Stay loose.
Well, I think Jack just wants to remind him that he's still out there. I mean, there comes a time when a pitcher feels like they're not respecting him out there. He says, hey, I'm still here, and I'm going to be here for a while, I hope.
Alicea got nailed yesterday by a Hasegawa fastball on his right knee. Just missing on the outside. 1 ball, 1 strike.
You know, a lot of people are wondering, well, why is Jack McDowell still in this ball game? Well, first of all, we talked about how important he is to the Cleveland Indians for this season. And he did not get enough innings thrown in spring training. This is still spring training for him. And you have to make a decision if you're Mike Hargrove of, hey, am I going to leave him out there and let him get some more innings in, get some more pitches in, or am I going to take him out early in this ballgame? I think we see the answer is that he's going to make sure that Jack McDowell gets his work in. But he also sees that McDowell is throwing the ball well. The thing that's getting him in trouble is his inconsistency out there.
3 balls, no strikes to count. It's a 4-pitch walk. Well, this is getting worse for McDowell. The bases are loaded as Alomar goes out to chat with him, and now the power's up. He's already down 5-1. Now Edmonds and Salmon and Hollins and all those guys are coming up, and Mark Wiley, the pitching coach, will go out and talk to Jack McDowell. Plus, you know, this bullpen has been worked over in the first 4 games of the season. I mean, they've had 21 innings pitched by the starting rotation in the first 4 games. Yesterday, O.J. went 6 innings. That's the most anybody's gone. And they've had extra inning ball games. I mean, they need some innings from McDowell tonight if they can get them. Coming up, Wednesday night baseball, the doubleheader. The Houston Astros off to a hot start with Jeff Bagwell facing the Atlanta Braves, who had a big weekend. They won twice today over the Cubs. Chipper Jones off to a hot start. Then the second half, the world champion Yankees right here in Anaheim. Bernie Williams and company taking on Tim Salmon and the Angels. 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. The Wednesday night baseball doubleheader on ESPN. The worldwide leader in sports television. Jim Edmonds, the hitter, bases loaded. Nobody out. Edmonds whacked a 2-run homer his first time. Infield double play dead. That one is hit deep into left field. Justice. One down as De Sarcina scores. It is 6-1. The other runner's holding.
This looks like it's a forkball or a splitter. Yes, over the outside part of the plate. And Edmonds does a good job. He just drives it to left field.
It's one down now. Salmon comes up. Well, Jack McDowell is getting roughed up, to say the least. He's allowed 6 runs. And we're only in the second inning with 1 out. Fastball to Salmon. He was late on it. Ball is into the upper deck. Still 2 men on base. First down at second. And Alisea at first with 1 gone.
John, but every team in the major leagues right now, with maybe the exception of the Atlanta Braves, are trying to, and then maybe the Toronto Blue Jays, are trying to get their rotation set. I mean, everyone has question marks about their rotation.
1 ball, 1 strike to Salmon.
And I never actually, you know, I've argued with you and Sparky Anderson and everyone over the years that pitching wasn't as important as we made it before. And you know what? It's far more important now than ever before.
Charles Nagy, the Indians' ace right-hander. There's a split-fingered pitch, foul tipped, and he really tied up Salmon on that one. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Well, the Cleveland rotation with Nagy going on opening night, and Hershiser, he really struggled in his first start, did not survive the 5th inning. Jack McDowell going tonight. Chad Ojay, good-looking young right-hander, and Bartolo Colon, who pitched here on Friday night, pitched well. They're all impressed with him. Way outside.
And there were guys that I talked to from the Angels that thought he might be even better off as a closer because he throws so hard, he doesn't have a lot of different pitches. And that's why I mentioned him, you know, as far as the bullpen is concerned, because he throws real hard, and if he comes in for an inning or two and just overpowers you, I mean, with that fastball, he's going to be very hard to hit.
Colon made his debut here on Friday. And the count goes to 3-2 to Salmon. But Hargrove was very impressed. He said that the longer he was on the mound, the better he got. And he had, of course, early nervousness, the flutters. And when he pitched through that after a couple of innings, he started throwing harder. He had much better command. They really liked what they saw. Runners are going. On the fists. Will come back out of play.
Yeah, they've done this a lot over the last couple of years with Salmon in that he seems to be, with 2 strikes, he seems, when they put the runners in motion, he seems to concentrate a little harder on just putting the ball in play. He doesn't overswing. So you'll see them do that more with a guy like Salmon than even with Edmonds.
Tim Salmon got a big contract extension this year, and he really has the power. The runners are going down on strikes. A throw to third, and it's knocked down by Williams. Heading home is Erstad. The throw, he's in. The throw goes wildly to the backstop, and over to third base goes Alisea. And that kind of play has happened over and over again to the Cleveland Indians on this road trip.
Well, that should have been a double play. Easy strikeout, throw him out at third base. Alomar has plenty of time here. If you watch, you see he's upset with himself. Now watch, he has plenty of time. Look at this. I mean, the runner's not even in the picture. Nice diving attempt by Matt Williams. He knocked it down, but then he hustles and tries to get rid of it quickly, and he throws it right in the line of the runner, and no chance for Alomar, and it gets away. So 2 errors there on that play, I assume, or maybe we'll see how they score.
I think so, because Williams' error allowed Alicea to make it to third base.
And
the Alomar's error allowed Erstad to score.
So I assume they'll give 2 errors, but we'll see how they score it.
There's a real good-looking split-fingered pitch there. It will be a steal for Erstad. And then the error on Alomar allowing him to score, and then the error on Williams allowing Alicea to go to third. Man, that wasn't pretty. The batter is Hollins. Going to count 1 ball and 2 strikes to Hollins, who singled his first time. It is 7-1. I mean, the Indians have been doing this in almost every game. They've had problems like that. They've made a month's worth of mistakes, both mental and physical, in 5 games. By the way, just for the record, Luis Alicea also gets a steal.
Right.
Double steal. And then the 2 errors. A double steal and a double error, Joe. Double jeopardy for the Cleveland Indians. 7-1. Runner at third, 2 down. Hollins fights off the split-fingered pitch there. There's the view from the Goodyear blimp. This is a work in progress here, Anaheim Stadium. Remember, it used to be enclosed for football. They've already removed much of the upper deck around the outfield. But the construction will not be totally finished until next season. That is a fair... No, foul ball. Okay, David, we get you. Yeah, microphones everywhere out here, don't we? Let's listen to Davey again, just in case you missed it. What is it, Davey? So, Davey, that's Rocky Rowe out there. That's not... Oh, that's Davey. All right. Davey. Foul. It was foul, right? Dave Phillips, great veteran American League umpire over at first base. Rocky Rowe at second base. Right back to McDowell, but even that won't be easy. And at long last, the inning has ended. 3 more runs for the Angels. 2 errors, 2 steals, and 4 foul calls on 1, Linda. And we will see those same 2 teams next Sunday night. We travel to St. Louis for Sunday night baseball. The Cardinals and the Astros from St. Louis. And Cardinals with some injury problems at the start of the year. But 0-6, and they're 5 games behind the Astros, who've been knocking off a couple of division titleists here in the first week of the season. They took 2 from Atlanta, and then they swept the Cardinals. Here is Sandy Alomar facing Mark Gubicza. Gubicza with a huge lead, 7-1. Alomar in the right center. Salmon. Jack McDowell may be one of the worst 2-inning stretches of his whole career. One thing on this ball club, when you're down by 6 after only 2 innings, doesn't mean you're out of it.
Yeah, right. You're definitely not out of the ball game.
Marquise Grissom, the leadoff man now coming up. I'm not saying I'm an expert of the Atlanta Braves or I have special knowledge about their clubhouse, Joe, but I would think that losing Grissom really leaves a void in the clubhouse. Obviously, they got a great player in Kenny Lofton. But I remember last year we went in there and Jermaine Dye, the rookie, had come in, and Marquise Grissom said, "Where you stand?" He didn't have a place, and he had to move right into his house.
Well, they got rid of Dye, too. But no, you're right. I remember seeing an interview with Bobby Cox after the trade was made. He said he will never have a better person play for him than Cox. But you know, when you get rid of a guy like Justice and Grissom, you know, no doubt you're losing a lot of talent from your ball club. Of course, they got some in return, and you know, Kenny Lofton, I mean, as an everyday player.
Bobby Cox said about Marquise Grissom, he says, "Marquise only cares about playing hard every day, fishing, and treating everyone in the world right."
That's a pretty good testimonial, huh?
Marquise Grissom, and the thing for Marquise, I mean, he had to be shocked. He had come home from Montreal, and he was won a World Series with the Braves, went back to the World Series last year. He gets the walk from Gubazar, so Grissom is aboard. Grissom has had a hard time in the American League. He is 1 for 20. That's only the third walk he's received. So some guys, it's awfully tough making that transition from one league to the next. Matt Williams has also been a little bit slow in getting it going.
Well, I think in Grissom's case, a lot of it has to be mental, John. I mean, he was in spring training thinking about having a great year and going back to the World Series with the Braves. All of a sudden, you're in a different league. So I think that adjustment for him is going to be, it's a little more mental. I think Matt Williams was already prepared, because his was done over the winter. But then how do you explain Justice doing so well? So
Justice is hot.
Yeah, and Justice swinging the bat well. So, I mean, I really believe that they're all going to have good years. I know Matt Williams will hit a lot of home runs in that ballpark. I know Justice will as well, and I think Marquise Grissom's going to have a good year.
Alomar Vizquel, the hitter. Runner at first, 1 out. Vizquel was robbed of a hit by Garret Anderson, who made a beautiful shoestring catch back in the first inning. With third base, Hollins is shallow. There's Garret Anderson out there in left field. Hit his first extra base hit tonight. One of the 2 first-inning home runs for Anaheim against the Cleveland Indians. How do you like this new Angel look, Joe?
You mean the uniform?
Yeah.
Well, it's unique because it reminds you of the old Cincinnati Reds uniform that Ted Kluszewski made famous.
Kind of the sleeveless?
Yeah, but this is not actually sleeveless. That blue is part of the uniform. It's not a sleeveless uniform like the Reds had. That blue is part of the actual uniform. See, it's not a cutout.
So it's built in.
Yes, it's part of the uniform.
The year Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run, seems to me the Atlanta Braves had a sleeve kind of like that.
Yeah, you're right. It was a different color than the other part of the uniform.
Yeah. John Miller, Joe Morgan discussing baseball fashion here from Anaheim.
I like this design, though.
Vizquel deep in the right field. Salmon gets there. Well, the ball seemed to be flying out there so far tonight, but Vizquel just doesn't have that kind of power.
Well, it also got him on the fist a little bit, John. The sound of that one was different. That one got him on the fist, so he didn't get it, but that ball did fly out there. See, that ball's inside a little bit. But you're right, it does seem to be flying out there. If you hit it pretty good, it's going to go. But a nice play by Salmon. Salmon has developed into a good defensive ball player. The Angels have a very good outfield, with these young players they have. Edmonds, Garret, Anderson, and Tim Salmon.
Salmon also had one of the great arms of any right fielder in the league. Erstad on the bag at first, holding against Marquise Grissom. Jim Thome is the hitter now. Big left-handed batting slugger. He went deep here last night. See the way Thome wears his pant leg up just beneath the knee. And his new teammate, Matt Williams, does it the same way. And they were immediate soulmates there. There's Matty on deck. 2 down. Grissom at first. It is 7-1 for the Angels so far. Mark Gubazar just loves being with this new ball club. Last year in Kansas City, the Royals averaged 3.7 runs per game when he was pitching. He was one of the worst supported starting pitchers in the entire American League. 2 balls, no strikes now to Thome. Thome walked his first time. Matt Williams on deck. There you see 3.85 runs in his starts. 3rd worst in the league. And they got more than half of those in 5 of the games that he pitched. So in most of his starts, they just didn't score. Now, that one ruled a strike by the plate umpire, Dale Scott, and Thome can't believe it.
Well, you can see the catcher is set up out there. Maybe Thome thought it was low. You see him Larry's lifted up.
Tommy again, very patient up there. Walked 123 times last year. And Gubazov strikes him out. One man left. Still 7-1 for the Angels. Anderson, then Murray coming up. Angels 7, Cleveland 1. We go to the last of the third inning. Jack McDowell trying to get it put together here after 2 terrible innings. Garret Anderson, who hit a 2-run homer against him, leads it off and takes ball 1. Eddie Murray is on deck. Anderson's 2-run first inning homer, his first extra base hit of the year, is 9 for 19. And that's called a strike. Mike Hargrove was ejected from the game moments after we went to commercial. He came out on the field after Jim Thome struck out and was promptly thrown out by the plate umpire Dale Scott.
Well, you see Dale saying, don't come out here. You cannot question balls and strikes. That's what he was telling him. He was warning him, don't come out here. And Hargrove went out anyway, and he was tossed.
Anderson tops it foul. Well, of course, Hargrove did come out, as you see.
But Dale was telling him, don't come out, don't come out. You can't argue balls and strikes. That was the original part of this that we missed. And Hargrove came out, and he threw him out.
And it's a base hit for Anderson.
But I think there was more to it than just the Thome, called second strike. Kevin Mitchell had complained earlier. A couple of the players have complained about the balls and strikes, and I think that's what Hargrove was trying to support his team. But you can't argue balls and strikes. I mean, that's the rules of baseball.
Eddie Murray comes up now. There's Thome with Anderson at first base. Garret Anderson is hitting .500 for the young season now, including 2 for 2 tonight. He is 10 for 20. Here's Murray, 0 for 1. And it's ball 1 down and in. Murray is 2 for 9 at the start of the year. 501 career home runs. Well, of course, this became a national story before we ever even got started with the exhibition games in spring training, when Richie Phillips, the man who heads the umpires union, sort of announced that they would not take anything from anybody. They would be within the rules, but any kind of arguing whatever, and they would be tossing guys out. There were a couple of instances that we read dispatches about early in the spring of people being tossed early. I know Brady Anderson in Florida got tossed twice from Baltimore games.
Well, Dale Scott was definitely within the rules because you cannot argue balls and strikes. I mean, that is the rule.
Murray hits one into center field. Grissom. And there is one man gone. Anderson back to first. That's the view from one of the world's most enduring symbols, the Goodyear Blimp Eagle, based in Carson, California. It's been providing these beautiful aerial photos tonight. 1997 marks the 72nd consecutive year that a Goodyear blimp has flown over a major sporting event.
Back to that point, John, we have seen managers be able to come out and argue balls and strikes in the past. But the rules say that you're not supposed to argue balls and strikes, so the umpire was within the rules.
Jim Leyritz, the hitter, singled his first time, starting a 3-run second inning rally. 7-1, the Angels are leading here in the third. 1 out, 1 out. Well, and of course, we don't know that Hargrove was arguing balls and strikes.
Well, but he must have been, because that's why he pointed to him, don't come out here. You can't argue balls and strikes. And once he came out, he threw him out. I don't think he would have thrown him out that quickly for something else. I mean, that's actually the only thing that happened that inning that would have upset the Indians anyway was the calls on the balls and strikes. But you don't get thrown out that quickly from a distance like that unless that's what you're doing.
We're told that Jeff Newman, the third base coach for Cleveland, is now the acting manager on the field for the Indians. 1 ball, and there's Jeff. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Leyritz. D. Sarcina on deck. There's the 4th ball for the strikeout.
I'm sure that Mike Hargrove is close enough that if a crucial decision has to be made, he will be the one to make it. And let's take a look at McDowell. This is what we talked about at the beginning, that he needed this pitch to be successful. He did not have it exploding like that early in the ball game, and he got hurt on some fastballs that were up. and also a couple of those pitches that were up, but that he had good control of that one.
Strike one to Sarcina. You're talking about manager running the ball club has been thrown out. The story of Billy Martin when he was with the A's was tossed out of a game at the Metrodome in Minnesota, went back to the clubhouse. It was on television. He had a phone, and he managed over the phone from the clubhouse. And that's the out at second base. There's more to that story. But right now, we're heading to the fourth inning. 7-1 Angels. Matt Williams coming up. And Matt Williams leads off here in the fourth inning. Williams hit into a force play his first time. David Justice and Kevin Mitchell will follow. Ball and no strikes to Matt Williams. He is 3 for 18 in the American League. He's hit a couple of doubles for RBIs in this series. 1 ball, 1 strike. Matt Williams called his friend Jim Lefevre. They both live in Arizona in the Scottsdale area during the winter. Asked Lefevre to help him work on his swing. Didn't like the way his swing was by the end of last year. There's a slider from Gubazar. 1 ball and 2 strikes. I saw Lefevre this spring, and he's predicting a huge year for Matt Williams based on what he saw and the way Matt reworked his swing during the winter.
Well, that may be true in the winter, but right now he's just pulling off of everything. Every pitch that's been away, a breaking ball away, he's just pulled off.
2-2.
There is a perception sometimes when players go from the National League to the American League that they're going to see a lot of sliders away and breaking balls away. And the worst thing you can do is go up there looking for breaking balls, because then you'll swing at a lot of bad pitches that are off the plate. So I think you have to approach it just like you did when you're in the National League. See the ball, attack the ball. And I still think you have to look for the fastball first and make adjustments to the breaking ball. But because they think that this is an American League tradition, that you're going to see a lot of breaking balls, you start looking for them, and you will chase a lot out of the strike zone.
Off the fists, foul. 3 balls, 2 strikes to Matt Williams. Dave Justice is on deck. 7-1, the Angels leading Cleveland. But if you're Terry Collins, the Angels manager, you're saying it's only the 4th inning. Last night they were ahead 4-1 into the 5th inning, and by the 6th inning they were behind 6-4. Base hit.
Well, that tells you right there and shows you that Gubazar doesn't have a good enough fastball that he can get in on Matt Williams with 2 strikes. He tried to get in on him, and he does get in a little bit, but Matt muscles it into left field for a base hit. You see this, they're set up inside. They try to get in, they can't get in. And with 2 strikes, Matt just rips it into left field for a base hit. It's a pretty good pitch. Looks like it's on the inside corner, but didn't have quite enough pop on it to get there.
In other words, he got it where he wanted, but didn't have the pop on it that he needed. Here's Dave Justice. He hit a long home run his first time. That's ball 1. Opening night in Oakland. Oakland manager Art Howe brought in a left-hander named Billy Brewer to face Dave Justice late in the ball game, and Justice hit one on the second deck at the Coliseum down the right field line, which doesn't happen often. That's called a strike on the inside. He also hit a home run last night against Chuck McElroy, another left-hander, and a tough left-hander. Actually, tonight, his home run against Gubazar is the first one he's hit against a right-hander.
That's Chuck.
Here's McElroy. He had a long night last night, 3 2/3 innings. And it's ball 2 to Justice.
Watch Justice approach the hitting. I mean, there's a old theory of there you see he's hit very well against left-handers in his career. There's a theory about hitting. You glide and you pop. And when you're not swinging well, you're kind of leaping and sweeping. But Justice has a nice glide into the ball, which serves him well against left-handed pitching, because what happens with left-handers, you pull off too quick or you move too quickly. You see, he stays right there and just drives this ball over the right center field wall for a home run. But he has a nice approach to the ball, and that's why I said I've always liked him, because he's got that smooth, pure swing.
Full count out of Justice, 3-2. Williams at first, nobody out. Kevin Mitchell is on deck. You're in that part of the Cleveland batting order where a lot of things could happen quickly. Here's Mitch on deck. Both Justice and Mitchell have hit 3 home runs in this young season already. This is only the 5th game of the year. And ball 4 to Justice.
Well, the reason he threw him a breaking ball there at 3-2 is because he couldn't get away with the fastball on Matt Williams, and so he had to try something else.
Well, there's the panoramic view of Anaheim Stadium here in Orange County, not far from the Pond, the home of the Mighty Ducks. Looks like they're going to make the playoffs. The Anaheim Mighty Ducks, or maybe they're already in the playoffs. They clinched. That's right. Now that I think about it, I think they've clinched a berth in the playoffs. Here's Kevin Mitchell. He was called out on strikes his first time. And it's ball 1. Now it's 7-1. The Angels seem awfully comfortable, but they shouldn't get too comfortable just yet. There's the pond out just beyond center field. The long-range plan here is that one day there will be a tram that would connect the two, and maybe eventually even connect the two with Disneyland, which is also not far from here. Joe, if that happened, you and I, we'd be spending all our time down here. 1-0 strikes to Mitchell. Williams at second, Justice at first. Nobody out. Giles on deck. Well, Gubazar, that's just what you were talking earlier, Joe. I mean, they've seen all this stuff from him now.
The second time through the order, they know exactly what he's going to do. They know that they're not afraid of his fastball, so they're going to be patient and not chase a lot of breaking balls out of the strike zone. And if you do that to a guy that's not throwing hard, you will get a good pitch to hit.
Jerry Collins. And of course, they're counting on Gubazar. They picked him up to bolster that starting rotation.
Paid a pretty high price, too.
There's Matt Williams at second base. Dave Justice at first base. Nobody out. 2-0 the count to Mitchell. And Mitchell is very upset. 2-1 the count. That one called a strike. Mitchell didn't think so. Is being called a strike. It's a good idea to keep throwing it.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you see that Laird is set up outside, and Mitchell again complains about the strike call.
It'd be a tough pitch to hit if you swung at it. Now 3-2.
Smart play, though, to go back out there again. Like you said, if they're going to call it strike, throw it out there.
Just keep working it.
Yeah.
Oral Hershiser, that's what he'd do.
Yeah.
He's getting that call. Here's the Bulldog. Mark Gubazar with a big lead, but trying to stay out of a big inning here. 2 men on, nobody out. 3-2 to Mitchell. High in the air to center. Playable. Both runners are tagging up. Edmonds with the catch, and both runners will hold.
Well, he threw Mitchell a breaking ball there, and I think he got away with it because it stayed inside a little bit. He had thrown Mitchell so far out. You see Mitchell very upset, and he's thrown a couple of pitches away, and I think Mitchell unconsciously was going out there to get that pitch, and that ball was toward the inner half of the plate. Now watch, this ball kind of hangs inside a little bit. So he can't get to it. If that ball's out over the plate a little bit more, I think Kevin does more with it. But you see, he's very upset, and not because he popped the ball up. He's upset because he feels like he was put in a hole there.
One down, Brian Giles. He smashes this one deep to center field. This one is over the head of Edmonds. Williams scores. Justice being waved home. Here's the relay. Cut off. It is 7-3 and a booming double by Brian Giles.
Gubicza tried to sneak a fastball by Giles on the first pitch because he didn't want to be continually pitching from behind. And Giles was ready for it, and he rips it over the head of center fielder Jim Edmonds. And it gets 2 runs home for the Cleveland Indians. So he tried to sneak this fastball by him, trying to get ahead in the count, but it doesn't work. Good hitting there by Giles, being ready for that fastball. And he rips it over Edmonds' head.
Marcel Latchman out to talk to Mark Gubicza. Brian Giles doing what he did seemingly whenever he played last year. 355 average he had when he came up from the minor leagues. I mean, that's what he had in the big leagues. Is Marcel Latchman, who was the manager of this ball club last year, now the pitching coach for the new manager, Terry Collins. And here is Tony Fernandez. This club has got a really experienced bench. Guys like Tony Fernandez, he's starting the year on the bench. Franco's normally playing second base. They got Brian Giles on the bench. A guy, Pat Borders, who's had a great World Series in his past. There's Pep Harris up in the bullpen for the Angels. Manny Ramirez is on the bench tonight. Kevin Seitzer, who hit .326 last year, he's on the bench. And that changeup misses low and outside. 1 ball, 1 strike to Fernandez. A lot of experience in this Cleveland ball club, no matter who Hargrove puts in there on a given night. They even got Chad Curtis on the bench, a guy who was the everyday center fielder for the Angels in here for years. Slider misses on the outside. 2 balls and 1 strike to Fernandez.
Gubicza wanted that pitch. But there you see they don't have any left-handers on the bench.
He's got all the left-handers in the game. But he's got a couple of 300 hitters, about 300 hitters on the bench. The power. That is a base hit down the left field line. Giles to round third. He'll score. Anderson will hold Fernandez to a single. And now it is 7-4. Cleveland, in the span of 2 batters, has cut a 6-run disadvantage in half.
Well, you see the patience here. They've hit 2 fastballs for base hits. Fernandez laid off a couple of pitches out of the strike zone. He gets another fastball, and he drives it inside the third base bag for a base hit. And he drives in a run. A lot of room over there. And Garret Anderson cuts it off.
But that's the very reason that the moment before we saw him throw a first pitch strike to Brian Giles. I mean, a first pitch fastball, right? Now this time, he tries the breaking stuff and falls behind. And comes in with a fastball behind. And either way, he's giving up the base hits here.
It's very difficult to pitch in the big leagues consistently if you do not have a good enough fastball that you can challenge the hitters with early in the count or even when you're behind in the count.
Alomar, who has gotten off to a hot start this year. He just blasted a home run right down the left field line here last night. He had 2 home runs early on in the year. Well, Jack McDowell had 2 of the worst innings of his life here, and all of a sudden he's supposed to be right back into this game. Alomar hit that one off the end of the bat. Edmonds takes it. 2 men gone. Fernandez back to first. Now Marquise Grissom will come up. And Grissom has struck out and walked. And Joe, I'm wondering if Grissom might be an actual better leadoff man as an American leaguer than he was in the National League. Now last year he had 23 home runs. He's got some pop in the American League without the pitcher batting. And especially in this lineup with Cleveland, I mean, he's got a chance to be a big RBI man.
Right.
Leadoff.
He's going to have a lot more opportunities to drive in runs in this league probably than he had in the American National League.
This could be trouble. It's fair. Fernandez to third. And he'll hold there.
I didn't want to say anything before, but I mean, I thought Tony Fernandez should have been at second base on the ball he hit down the left field line, and if so, he would have been able to score right there, but he was playing it safe, and he's only able to get to third base on this ball. You see, Alomar gets out of the way, and Salmon can't get there. And it's just right there in no man's land, and it becomes a base hit for Marquise Grissom.
Tim Salmon. Just, yeah, no man's land. That's what it was. I was kind of surprised that Grissom didn't get to second base with all of his speed.
Yes.
Now, Omar Vizquel. We do have word about Fernandez, though, that he did hurt his ankle this spring and is not at 100% efficiency, so
that's good to know.
That explains it, because, I mean, speed has always been a part of his game.
Yeah, that's good to know.
In fact, that was one of the reasons why he's not the starting second baseman at the start of the year. The job he thought he was going to get. And Vizquel takes a strike, 1 ball, 1 strike. 7-4 now. And of course, the prime directive when you're a pitcher, you got a big lead. Stay out of the big inning. Well, here's Cleveland with 3 on the board already, still only in the 4th inning. And the power is behind Vizquel. I mean, this is a huge batter for Gubazat again.
And the other key, John, if you have a big lead, is to get to 5. Think through 5 innings and look for help.
And you're ahead 7-1. You got to pitch 5 to get credit for a win.
Yeah.
Gubazat has thrown 31 pitches in this inning alone. Fernandez at third, Grissom at first. Up the middle, base hit. Fernandez scores. Grissom back to second. It's a 4-run inning. And now the power is coming up. Jim Thome, the 9th batter of the inning. Yeah, Marcel Ashman's on the phone to the bullpen. And that's going to do it for Gubazat. Well, it's just plain to see him, and he just doesn't have what it takes here tonight to get these guys out. Pep Harris was the man we saw in the bullpen, and he will be coming on to face Jim Thome. 7-5. We'll be back. John Miller and Joe Morgan back in Anaheim. 7-5 for the Angels now. And Pep Harris, a one-time Cleveland Indian farmhand, comes on. Terry Collins, who went out to get Mark Gubazat, had some words for Pep Harris as he took the mound. Here's what he said.
Come on, Pepper. Good stuff downstairs now. Go to work. Come on.
Good stuff downstairs, Joe.
Yeah.
More of that bad stuff upstairs. Jim Thome. If you don't throw good stuff to this guy, he'll lose one in a hurry. Pep Harris, coming from the Cleveland Indians to the Angels in a trade that sent Brian Anderson over to Cleveland last year. He pitched 2 2/3 shutout innings in the Angels' victory against Cleveland on Friday night here. 2 balls and no strikes. Thome has walked and struck out in this game. 2 men on. Marquise Grissom at second base. Omar Vizquel at first base. 4 runs have scored in this inning for Cleveland. The Angels lead the game 7-5. Matt Williams, who led off the inning with a single, is on deck. That fastball misses, 84 miles per hour. 3-0 to Thome. Mark Gubazat, going to be awfully difficult when you're a guy used to throw 97 miles an hour. I mean, we almost never saw him above 81, 82 miles an hour tonight. Unable to get through the 4th inning in a game where he was leading by 6 runs. Down the right field line. And they will be running for a while. Knocked down by Salmon. Grissom scores. Vizquel will hold at third. A double for Thome. It's a 1-run game. 7-6.
Well, it was a 3-0 pitch, and Thome was definitely going to get a pitch and try to pull it. And we'll take a look at this. He hits it toward the end of the bat because he pulled off a little bit, but he gets it down the line. It's a 3-0 fastball. Ball's actually moving away from him. Now let's take a look. The one thing to watch is watch how he clears his front side out of the way. This is why Tomey's such a good hitter. Watch his hips. See, they're gone, and that lets him swing the bat freely through the hitting zone.
Matt Williams, the hitter, with a chance to put Cleveland ahead now. Williams led off the inning with a single to left. And what has turned into a 5-run inning, and that's so far. 5 runs have scored so far. Vizquel, the possible tying run at third base. Tomey, the possible go-ahead run at second base. That one is a base hit. Vizquel scores the tying run, and here comes Tomey with the go-ahead run. The second hit of the inning for Matt Williams. 7 runs have scored, 8-7. Incredibly, Cleveland is ahead, and we're still in the 4th inning.
Well, we talked about how good a lineup this Cleveland Indians lineup was. And they've been swinging the bats very, very well this inning. They've been getting pitches to hit that looked like a little fastball down and away. It may have been a cutter. And Matt Williams, a little cutter there, and he lines it over the head of the shortstop.
Dave Justice, the hitter. And that's a foul. Justice walked his first time in this inning. He also has hit a home run tonight. That was back in the 2nd inning. Jack McDowell. Oh, it's great to be young and a Cleveland Indian. Jack McDowell, one of the worst starts of his entire career. 7 runs allowed in the first 2 innings. And McDowell is still in the game, and he's ahead now. In the dirt, and Williams will move to second. Well, I told you Matt Williams has had 2 hits in this inning. 2 of the 7 hits that they've had in the 4th inning. Matt Williams got the first one. Then later on, Brian Giles with a 2-run double. Fernandez with a hit. Grissom a hit. Vizquel. Then Tomey with a double. And Matty again. Everybody's doing. No throw there.
The tough thing is for Gubazov is that we talked about his lack of run support last year, and he had a 7-1 lead here after 2 innings, and he wasn't able to hold it. I'm sure he's very upset about that.
2 balls and a strike now to Dave Justice. Gubazov ultimately goes 3 2/3 innings and is charged with 7 runs and 6 hits. The run that has Cleveland ahead is actually charged to Pep Harris. And it's over. Alisea throws out Justice, and the Cleveland Indians have been retired. 11 men bats, 7 of them score. Erstad, Alisea, Edmonds coming up. Cleveland is leading. This statue of Jackie Robinson was presented in a special ceremony to Jackie Robinson's family before the game, Joe.
Yes, it's presented by the Angels. And Bill White, former National League president, accepted. And the niece of Jackie Robinson, a couple of nephews, Kathy and Edwards, were here, and they all accepted it on behalf of the Jackie Robinson family. Rachel was up in Los Angeles, and she's traveling around the country.
She was part of a ceremony that they had at Dodger Stadium last night. As baseball commemorates the 50th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's breaking the so-called color line, becoming the first African-American to play Major League Baseball in the 20th century 50 years ago. And, of course, we'll be at Shea Stadium on ESPN a week from Tuesday, the 15th, the actual anniversary of his first game for the Dodgers. Brian Giles with the catch on a ball off the bat of Darren Erstad, who is retired for the first time in this game. 1 man gone. Here at the Anaheim Stadium now, they have the Orange County Sports Hall of Fame with a special tribute to Jackie Robinson on display out there, as well as to the old Negro Leagues. And courage, I know you were the MC for the ceremony tonight, and courage was the word that you used with in regards to Jackie Robinson.
I think it's very fitting.
Luis Alisea to Fernandez, who throws him out. Alisea with his first actual at-bat in this game. He'd had a sacrifice bunt and a walk in his first 2 go-rounds. 2 down just like that. Jack McDowell's got the lead as the sun is setting here in Southern California. And we'll come back inside Anaheim Stadium here as Jim Edmonds gets ready to bat. He's had a home run and 3 RBIs against McDowell in this game. McDowell pitching with the lead for the first time. Called a strike. Jim Edmonds slammed a home run in the first inning and then a sacrifice fly deep to left in the second. The Angels scored 4 in the first and 3 in the second, and were leading at that time 7-1. Now they are trailing 8-7 in the fourth. On the corner, strike 2 call.
Well, Jack McDowell is still throwing hard, and his fastball has maybe a little more movement on it now than it had earlier in the ballgame. Those first 2 pitches to Edmonds have really tailed away from him.
Strike 3 called on the inside. It looks like a new pitcher. He's got the lead, and he shuts him down 1-2-3. A 7-pitch inning. Kevin Mitchell. And there is ball 1 to Kevin Mitchell. Here we go. Into the 5th inning. 8-7. Cleveland is leading the Anaheim Angels. Kevin Mitchell is struck out looking, and he's flied out to center. Pep Harris, the second Angels pitcher of the game. And the breaking ball is in there for a strike. 1 ball, 1 strike. Mitchell, Giles, and Fernandez. Well, this wild West Coast trip of the Cleveland Indians continuing tonight as they had a 7-1 deficit. Now they are leading. Last night they were down 4-1 as late as the 5th inning. They went on to win 7-5. Here's Matt Williams, who had 2 hits in that 7-run 4th inning rally. Now it's 3-1 to Kevin Mitchell. On opening night in Oakland, they had a 6-1 lead. They lost it. I mean, they lost the lead. They came back and won the game finally, 9-7. Then they had a 4-1 lead in the second game in Oakland, and they blew that lead and lost the game. And there's ball 4 to Kevin Mitchell. So Mitchell gets the leadoff walk here in the 5th inning. In that Orange County Sports Hall of Fame downstairs, they have the special Negro League exhibit. And these are lists of things that were invented by Negro League players, like shin guards. Frank Grant. He also invented the feet first slide, Joe. And how about Elston Howard inventing the donut ring, which players put on their bat to get ready to hit. That's the second Alisea. There's one. DeSarcina to first. Double play.
That was turned very nicely by Alisea. Second baseman starting that double play, and DeSarcina completing it. Watch how quickly Alisea gets the ball to DeSarcina and makes a good throw right there, chest high. DeSarcina steps away from Kevin Mitchell and gets off a good throw to get Giles at first base.
Well done, Luis Alisea. He was Boston last year back in St. Louis, now with the Angels. They lost Randy Velarde, the man who's supposed to be their everyday second baseman. He's out for the year. Needed some surgery. So they're glad to have Alisea. I remember Tony Fernandez.
I remember Alisea from the College World Series, Florida State years ago. I actually thought he was going to be a much better player than he has been. Not that he hasn't been a good player. He has been a good player for St. Louis over the years, but I thought he was going to be a big star. I thought he was going to steal more bases than he has stolen in the major leagues, but he's been a good Major League Baseball player since he left college.
You know the count to Fernandez. Fernandez singled home a run in that big 4th inning rally. Seemed like almost every Cleveland hitter either drove in or scored a run. They scored 7 times. And there's ball 4. So Harris has walked 2 of the 3 hitters he's faced in this inning, which is why pitchers love to get that double play. Now Sandy Alomar will come up. 8-7. Cleveland is leading in the top of the 5th. Next Sunday we will be in St. Louis. We'll get a look at those Cardinals, the defending champions of the Central Division, And the current front runner in the Central, the Houston Astros, under their new manager, Larry Durker. Broadcaster turned manager. Your old teammate.
Maybe you should do that.
Yeah. What if... I'm going to try to forget you ever said that, Joe.
Well, I certainly hope St. Louis wins the game before we get there, because they're going to be pretty honorary if they haven't won a game by the time we get there next week.
0-6. They've never, in their history, and they have a long history, had a year where they started with 6 consecutive losses until now. Alomar, that pitch is up around his chin, and he socks it in the right field for a base hit. Salmon's throw cut off as Fernandez makes it over to third.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this pitch is way up. Look at him. He just hacks on, but he gets on top of it. That's the key. And grounds it through the right side. He had a hole over there because they were holding Fernandez on. And you see Fernandez hustling around the third.
So Marcel Achmanat to speak to Pep Harris as Marquise Grissom gets ready to bat here. Say, friends, the first 24-hour All Sports News Network is here. Yes. Catch all the scores, highlights, live press conferences, and much, much more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on ESPN News. If you don't get ESPN News, call your local cable operator or satellite program provider. Two down, 2 on, and here is Marquise Grissom. Grissom got his second American League base hit in the 4th inning as part of that rally. Just a little bloop along the right field line that fell in. He's also walked. He's been on base twice. 1 for 2. Fernandez at third, Alomar at first. Alomar is now 7 for 15 for the young season. It's been a slow starter at times in the past, but he's swinging the bat well right now. Sandy Alomar. 1 ball, 1 strike to count. Cleveland ahead by 1, threatening to get more. Jammed him. 1 ball and 2 strikes now. Now this ball game is sort of the standard Cleveland game here in the first week of the season. I mean, their defense has not been good. Their pitching's been shaky. But the offense, that's another story. And a pop foul back out of play. Let's see, they scored 8 runs tonight. And in their first 5 games, they've now scored 34 runs. And, of course, they may not be done scoring tonight just
I don't
yet.
think they are.
So, even up to the moment, if they don't score again tonight, they'll be averaging 7 runs a game through tonight. 1 ball and 2 strikes, or rather 2 balls and 2 strikes. And there is Dennis Springer up in the bullpen now for the Angels. This is a night where Terry Collins wanted to get a few innings out of his starter. The bullpen's a little chewed up right now. Well, it's a 3-2 count now. Collins indicating to the first baseman, Darren Erstad, to play over behind Sandy Alomar, who will be off and running with his pitch. There he goes. And another walk. And that is the 3rd walk of the inning by Pep Harris. Well, you know, Joe, when Davy Johnson came to the American League last year, after the first month of the season, when his bullpen was totally shot, and it would be shot for like 5-6 days at a time. And he said, you know, I had to completely rework the way I manage a game. About how far I can let a starter go before I've got to go get him, things like that. And Terry Collins may find that same hard lesson over here with the Angels. I mean, this is the 5th game of the year, and the bullpen's chewed up already. He's told us before the game tonight. In fact, he's thinking he'd probably be better off if we got another pitcher up here soon. Well, Harris gets out of the jam. Vizquel flies out to Edmonds. Cleveland does not score. Somebody alert ESPN News. Update. 8-7 Cleveland. Salmon coming out. Tim Salmon leads off for the Angels last of the 5th inning. John Miller and Joe Morgan, your Sunday night telecasters. Tonight, our debut telecast for our 8th season of Sunday Night Baseball. There's ball 1 to Tim Salmon. He has struck out twice in this game against Jack McDowell. This is a game where it was almost as if the real Jack McDowell came on in relief of the imposter Jack McDowell we saw in the first couple of innings.
But the point you were making, last inning is that sometimes you have to stay with your starter longer, and I think we saw that with Mike Hargrove. He had made a decision he was going to stay with Jack. Remember, they didn't even have anyone warming up, and the Angels already had 7 runs, so he had made up his mind that he was going to stick with Jack for a long time tonight.
Man, look at that movement on that pitch. 1 ball and 2 strikes.
And maybe another point here, John, sometimes a pitcher like McDowell, as he gets tired a little bit, maybe he gets a little bit more movement. And maybe he was overthrowing this pitch before, the splitter or the fork ball, and all of a sudden now he gets the rhythm of it.
Seemed like he hung a few of them those first 2 innings. Oh.
Different Jack McDowell, you're right.
And that is 3 consecutive strikeouts for Tim Salmon. He struck out against both Jack McDowells tonight. 5 strikeouts for McDowell.
There you see right down and away. Perfect pitch there with 2 strikes.
Dave Hollins, Sandy Alomar before the game talking about how McDowell throws fork balls that dip down. Some of them dip down and away. Some of them dip down and in. Right center field. Marquise Grissom. 2 men gone. Hollins is now 1 for 3. From high above Anaheim Stadium, these aerial pictures are courtesy of the Goodyear Blimp Eagle, based in Carson, California. The pilot tonight is Charles Russell from Downey, California. 8 consecutive Angels retired by Jack McDowell. Here is Garret Anderson, whom he has not retired tonight. Anderson has hit a 2-run homer. That was in the first, and he singled in the 3rd. In fact, when he singled in the 3rd, that marked the last time that an Angel has reached base. That marks the last time an Angel has reached base in this game. 8-7, McDowell and Cleveland ahead. 2 balls and a strike. Eddie Murray would be next. Talking about Davy Johnson and how he had to rethink the way he managed the game. He said in the National League he used to feel like 4 runs and he had to get the guy out of there because they still had a chance to win a game if they could limit the other team to 4 runs.
Right.
He said he did that when he came to Baltimore last year, and he the bullpen was pitching 6 or 7 innings every night. I don't know if they actually did it or not, but they were talking about opening the year this season with 13 pitchers on that Baltimore staff. 2-2. Inside. Full count now. 3-2. You can do that in the American League. I mean, it's still maybe risky because you need a bench for some things no matter what. But if you got a lineup of everyday players that you're not going to hit for, you don't need much of a bench. Left field, Justice can't hold it. So Anderson gets his 3rd hit of the game. That'll be scored as a single. Would have been a beautiful play by Justice had he been able to put the squeeze on it.
It's interesting with Justice because he was becoming a very good right fielder in the National League, and now having to move to left field, and like you say, not getting enough time to practice this. And the balls come at you differently in left field than they do right field, especially from left-handed hitters. We see the ball slicing away from him in the first inning when he made a mistake, and that ball there actually slid away from him right at the end.
Garret Anderson is 3 for 3. And here comes Eddie Murray. And Anderson was the most shocked man in the building when McDowell turned and threw that ball to first base. Anderson had taken a step towards second just at that moment. He really had to scurry back to the bag. Eddie Murray has grounded to second and flied to center. And that's a ball. 1 ball and no strikes. Eddie Murray would like to have stayed in Baltimore one more year. He had a wonderful return to Baltimore last year. It was there that he hit his 500th home run, in the city where he started his long career. But the Orioles decided to go a different way, and Murray ended up signing here in Anaheim, which, of course, is very close to home for him. He grew up in Southern California. 11th all-time in hits, 15th all-time for home runs. And the one I think that stands out with Murray even more than those other, the RBIs, because that's what his career has been all about. I mean, every year that he has played, and he's played a long time, he has had 75 RBIs or more in every year, 20 consecutive years. And also only Lou Gehrig in the history of Major League Baseball with more grand slams than Murray. He's always been one of the great clutch hitters. And the count goes to 2-1 now to Murray. He was a great influence when he went to Cleveland, as we discussed earlier in the telecast, helped them make a World Series in 1995. And when he got to Baltimore last year, it changed the whole atmosphere in the clubhouse. And the Orioles went into a hot streak and actually took a 12-game deficit against the Yankees and narrowed it to 2.5 games with a couple of weeks to go in the season. And then finally Baltimore was the wild card team. Anderson running. Murray lifts a foul up into the twilight. Heads back in amongst the spectators. 2 balls, 2 strikes. And you see, as we look west from the upper deck in right field at the beautiful sunset here in Southern California. Question at this point with Eddie Murray at age 41, is this also the twilight of his career? We know it will be his last year, but there's been talk. There have been persistent rumors about Eddie Murray, and you wonder if he gets off to a slow start, which he often has, how long will they go with him at his age? You see, Murray has always been steady. That's the average season in each one of those decades. Even into the 90s, approaching age 40. And hitting, as he is tonight, 7th in the order. In Baltimore last year, he often hit 8th in the order.
You know, it's interesting, John, when you're young and you get off the slow starts and then pick it up every year, that's just normal. When you get a little older and you get off the slow start, they always wonder if it's your age, even though you've done it in the past.
Base hit for Murray. Anderson will go to third. First and third, 2 down, and Leyritz coming up.
There are a lot of people who are questioning whether he could get around on the fastball anymore. Take a look here. He takes this fastball and rips it in the hole in the right field. I mean, that's the kind of the patented Eddie Murray swing right there. Nothing different about that one. Good balance, and he really was able to pull that ball in the hole.
3,221 base hits now for Eddie Murray. Now Jim Leyritz. Let's see if he can duplicate his World Series heroics here with his ball club down. High and tight, ball 1. Leyritz in this game has singled and scored a run, and he has struck out, and he's always hit well against Jack McDowell, who was a battery mate of his a couple of years ago, and McDowell spent a season with the Yankees. Anderson at third base, Murray at first. They get back-to-back singles with 2 men down in the 5th. Called strike on the outside. 1 ball, 1 strike. There's Anderson at third base. 3 hits tonight. There's Murray at first with Tomey, his old teammate. A lot of the Cleveland players, even after he was traded to Baltimore last year, would call Eddie, seek his counsel. 1 ball, 1 strike the count to Leyritz. Inside with a fastball. Stay with the hard stuff. He was probably watching when Mark Walters hung that slider to Leyritz in the World Series last October.
Well, that's true, but Layers is also a pretty good fastball hitter. You've got to make sure you get it in the location that you want.
That's why Walter threw him that slider. I mean, and Layritz himself said that's ruled a check swing on the appeal. 3-1. Layritz said, and they said, why do you think he threw you a slider? He said, well, you know, I had a pretty good rip at a couple of those fastballs. 3-1 the count. Well, they talk about location. That one on the outside. Fastball, but not a good fastball to hit. 3-2 the count. Murray will be off and running from first base. Thome moves off the bag and plays behind him over there. Cleveland ahead by 1, 8-7. Thome backing up. McDowell.
I think he should realize Eddie Murray's been around too long for that.
Come on now, it's Eddie. Think I never seen that? Seen that 14,000 times. Murray goes up the middle, base hit. Layridge delivers in the clutch again. Anderson scores the tying run. Murray goes to third. It is 8-8.
Well, he basically stayed with all hard stuff with Layridge, but he only got one pitch exactly where he wanted. Well, the first pitch, fastball in, fastball away, in again, away, and he stayed away. And this was right away again, but it's up. If he would have gotten that one down a little bit, I think he would have been able to get him out. But he got that pitch up, and Layridge lined it back to the box for a base hit. So all hard stuff there to Layridge.
That's interesting. I mean, what happened to that split-fingered pitch? And he's had good success with it in the last couple of innings.
I agree with you. Sometimes when you don't have as good a control with your splitter that you'd like, and you get a runner at third base, sometimes you're a little leery about throwing it because that's a pitch you want to keep down, and if you bounce it and make it away from Sandy Alomar and let the runner score. But if you have confidence, if he has his confidence, I'm sure he would have thrown one in there after he got to 2-2.
Yeah. And it wasn't a fat pitch, even at that. Mark Wiley, the pitching coach, has visited with Jack McDowell, and here is Gary DiSarcina. The Cleveland bullpen gets busy. And that's in there for a called strike. There is Steve Klein, the rookie who made this staff in the spring up from Double-A ball. There's Jeff Newman, the acting manager. Mike Hargrove ejected from the game. McDowell off the mound to get it. To throw out DiSarcina, but a two-out rally by the Angels to tie this ball game. It is 8-8 after 5. The power is coming up. Thome, Matt Williams, Dave Justice. Stay tuned. And there is ball one to Jim Thome. We go to the 6th inning. 8-8 the score. Pep Harris, the second Angels pitcher, facing Thome and then Matt Williams to follow. And then Dave Justice. That foul ball down the left field line into the club level here at Anaheim Stadium. Nighttime settling in over Southern California. Thome has walked, he has struck out, and he has doubled. Harris misses outside. To 8. 8 runs, 9 hits, and 2 errors for Cleveland. 8 runs, 11 hits for the Angels. Edmonds and Anderson home runs for California. Justice a homer for Cleveland. And it is 3-1. Pep Harris, and Pep is actually his name. Not really. Base hit. Sale is so far over into the hole toward first base that Thome was able to sneak it through there.
Take a look at Jim Thome and watch his position in the batter's box. He stands deep, but he's close to the plate, so he can cover their entire plate. You can see he goes out and gets this pitch that's out away from him and grounds it up the middle for a base hit.
Jim Thome with his second hit of the game, and here is Matt Williams. 2 for 3 in the game. Matt started in Oakland, his first 2 American League games with Cleveland in Oakland, and he went 0 for 8 there. And of course, still in the Bay Area, was getting a nice ovation every time he came up. Kevin Mitchell thought maybe he was trying a little bit too hard there with him back in the Bay Area. This could be 2. Here's 1 to first. 2.
That's a nice turn there by Hollins and Alicea.
5 to 4 to 3. Hollins to Alicea to Erstad.
Well, this ball is smoked down to Hollins. You see, backhands it 1 step, and he gives Alicea a good throw. He comes across the bag, gets away from Tomey, and gets the throw over first base to get Matt Williams. Nice play.
So Matt Williams, who had 2 hits in the 4th inning, not this time. Williams has had 5 hits in this 3-game series, though, so his bat is starting to speak Williams-like.
But that tells you how this game is, John. That's the hardest ball he's hit all night, and that's not a base hit. The other 2, one he hit off the handle, he jammed himself to the line drive, and the other hit toward the end of the bat. That one he hit right on the nose.
Dave Justice has homered, walked, and grounded out to second. He is 1 for 2. 2-0 the count, 2 down, nobody on. Pep Harris has induced a double play ball in each of the last 2 innings, and it has helped him considerably.
You might say it saved him, John, because he walked 3 hitters in the last inning, and he still got out of it without being scored upon.
I mean, he walked 3 and gave up a hit in the last inning and did not allow a run. So Pep is living dangerously, but he's getting that opportune double play ball. Into the upper deck off to the left, out of play. Fan up there caught that ball. Sun setting, Joe. That's live. That's live television right there.
I don't think I've ever seen the sun quite in that arrangement.
That's the way it looks from a blimp. 3-1 the count. Alicea from right field. Can he get him? Yes. Alicea has had an inspired couple of innings here defensively. We go to the last of the 6th. The top of the order coming up. Erstad, Alicea, and then Jim Edmonds. It's tied at 8. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning. And by new Tagamet HB 200 for heartburn, block acid fast with new Tagamet HB 200. It's our 8th season of Sunday Night Baseball. I'm John Miller with Joe Morgan. Seems to me I worked with you last year, too.
And the year before that, I think.
Yeah, and the year before that. Our 8th year together. And tonight, our debut telecast. We have to have one of those cliffhangers, though, at the end of the season. You know, so that people will have to tune in our first telecast the next year to find out
what happened. You're right.
Yeah, we're going to work on that. Steve Klein is in now. This game itself might end up being one of those cliffhangers. It's 8-8 in the last of the 6th. I mean, it's taken a few twists and turns. The Angels once led the game 7-1, only to fall behind 8-7 by the 4th inning. Darren Erstad, the hitter, right to Tomey. There's one away. We're getting a look at a young pitcher who had a great spring and made this staff, which was not supposed to have happened. Joe Morgan, my partner, was up on the Diamond Vision screen. They had a tribute to Jackie Robinson between innings.
And that's something unusual right there. We've seen him stealing bases. I've seen him hitting, but very rarely have I seen him play defense. That shows that he was a very good defensive player. In fact, he led their National League in double plays as a rookie.
Here's Luis Alicea with a ground ball to short, and he's thrown out by Vizquel. Of course, we'll be there for the 50th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's Major League debut, which occurred April 15, 1947, which was at Ebbets Field. Of course, the Dodgers now play in Los Angeles. The Dodgers will be at Shea Stadium back in New York. And we'll have it for you. Exclusive national coverage, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Joe and I will be at Shea. Rachel Robinson supposed to be there. President Clinton is supposed to be there as part of the ceremonies. And we hope you'll be there with us right here on ESPN.
Should be a fantastic evening.
Jim Edmonds, the hitter, he has hit a 2-run homer, a sacrifice fly, and then he was called out on strikes his last time. 3 RBIs for the game. Steve Klein out of West Virginia. Last year in Double-A at Canton Akron was 8-12 with a 5.46 ERA.
Well, I can see why he was impressive in spring training, John. He comes in and he throws strikes.
Yeah. Just as you were saying. 3 up and 3 down on 6 pitches. We go to the 7th inning. Kevin Mitchell coming up. It's time. Cleveland 8. The Angels 8. We go to the top of the 7th. We head into the late innings. Pep Harris, who came on very shakily, but has held the line. Kevin Mitchell takes ball 1. Starter Mark Gubazov, 3 2/3 innings, 7 runs allowed. Harris has worked the last 2 1/3, 1 run given up. And it's a ball. 2-0. Kevin Mitchell has struck out, fly to center, and walked. And he's been at odds with the plate umpire Dale Scott for much of the evening. 2-1 now. Mitchell, then Giles and Fernandez. Kevin Mitchell is the only Cleveland batter who does not have a hit in this game. They have 10 hits all told. None by Mitchell. Everybody else has at least 1. Cleveland's big inning, a 7-run 4th inning. They swing. Yeah. Dave Phillips, the first base umpire on the infield. 2-2 to Mitchell.
How about that mask Jim Leyritz is wearing? Now, that'll protect you, whether you're a hockey goalie or what. Look at that.
It looks more like a Gee or a Martin. Pops foul back out of play. Just
or a walk.
All right. Yeah. Joe, look at that. The Matterhorn.
My parents took me there when I was a little kid.
Yeah. Well, you've always said that they were great parents.
Yes.
2-2 the count. And it's a full count now. 3 balls and 2 strikes. 8-8 in the top of the 7th. Well, Kevin Mitchell fought that one off for sure.
Well, that's a sign of a good hitter. You fool, just fight it off. There's Matt Williams.
Pep Harris, I told you, his real name is not Pep. Fernando Petrocelli Harris.
Okay. I see why they call him Pep then.
Broken bat, Ali said. So Kevin Mitchell still hitless.
Good pitching there by Harris after he got the 3-2. Throw him a good curveball and got Mitchell looking for the curve, and then throw him a good fastball. So, a way to keep the hitter off balance.
Pep Harris is 24 years of age. He is from Lancaster, South Carolina. You ever play there?
No.
Come on.
I only played in Carolina once, in Durham.
Durham, you were the Durham Bulls, right?
Yeah, I was a Bull.
Man, that pitch was tough. That looked like a... What was that pitch? What's he doing out there? I mean, it looked like maybe a forkball or something. 1 strike to count. And the curve is too high. Pep Harris, or Fernando Petrocelli Harris, signed with Cleveland back in 1991. And he was going all the way through their farm system until he was traded last year for Brian Anderson. A curveball. Got him looking. 2 men down. Here in the Cleveland 7th. Say, friends, tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, Bob Lee hosts Outside the Lines. Women and sports at the crossroads. Outside the Lines takes an in-depth look at the issues surrounding the state of women's sports on the 25th anniversary of Outside the Lines. That's the 25th anniversary of Title IX. Title IX. Gotcha. That's not what the gay meter read said, but
that's what we're talking about.
I was thinking, man, that show really has been around a long time. Tony Fernandez deep into left field and over the head of Anderson. Fernandez muscled up on that one. His second hit of the game.
Garret Anderson playing shallow in left field because you don't expect Tony Fernandez to have that kind of power straight away left field. He does to the gap in left center. The fastball is out over the plate, and Tony hammers it over the head. This is way over Garret Anderson's head. And he goes into second base with a double.
Now Marcel Latchman will go out. Tony Fernandez seems like he's been around forever. Well, he's been a good offensive player. I always thought of as a great shortstop.
He was a great AstroTurf shortstop, John. I think that's where the distinction should lie there. He was a great AstroTurf shortstop when he played for the Toronto Blue Jays on AstroTurf. He went to San Diego, and he was not as good defensively on the regular turf as a shortstop. And I think that's where his downfall came. When he went to San Diego, he tried to play deep on the regular turf, and he couldn't make the same plays. Because he's never thrown over the top like a normal shortstop. He kind of flips the ball from the side, and you can't do that on dirt. If you have to go in the hole, you have to come up and fire something.
Well, he's always been able to hit. 1993, he got traded back to the Toronto Blue Jays near mid-season. Helped lead them to the World Series. Had a great World Series that year. Sandy Alomar to D. Sarcina, and just like that, the inning is over. 8-8 the score. Tim Salmon coming up. It's Cleveland 8 and the Angels 8. We head to the last of the 7th inning. Sunday night baseball from Anaheim. Now coming up on Wednesday, the Wednesday night baseball doubleheader. Jeff Bagwell and the hot Houston Astros taking on Chipper Jones and the National League champion Atlanta Braves. That's at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. And then world champion New York with Bernie Williams against these Angels with Tim Salmon. The Wednesday night baseball doubleheader. Tim Salmon takes ball one from Steve Klein. Tim Salmon, he struck out 3 consecutive times against Jack McDowell. Now he faces the rookie, Steve Klein. He hit a grand slam to win the ball game in the bottom of the 11th here on Friday against Cleveland. This guy, don't make a mistake with him. Not now, not in a tight ball game, not late. Dave Hollins is on deck. Klein looks like he wants nothing at all to do with it.
Yeah, well, he's got good movement on the fastball. He's trying to run it away, but he's missed with a couple of fastballs he threw out there.
Salmon had 30 home runs last year, 34 the year before, and he gets a 4-pitch walk. Now the switch hitter, Dave Hollins, will come up. Hollins has singled, hit a comebacker, and fly it out to right center. That's the view from the blimp here at Anaheim Stadium. 29,000 plus the attendance here tonight. The capacity of this ballpark now is about 34,000 with the construction going on. Nice, a bunt by Hollins, who has excellent speed, but it's foul.
And a smart play if it was Hollins' idea or the manager's, because just drop one down, try to beat it out for a base hit. If you don't beat it out, at least you move the go-ahead run into scoring position. Little League night here as usual when we're here on Sunday, John, and thousands of Little Leaguers around the ballpark tonight.
Oh, Florida Marlins fan. Marlins won again today. They had a great spring, and they've had a great first week. They're 5-1. 1-1 to Hollins. It's a high foul down the right field line and back into the crowd. 0-2 the count.
When you have starting pitching like the Marlins have and the hitting they have, you're going to be a good ball club. I guess the only thing they have to worry about is make sure they play good defense behind that pitching staff.
They're off to a hot start, even though Gary Sheffield has not yet started to hit. 0-2.
Well, they're going to make Bobby Bonilla prove that he can handle hitting behind Sheffield before they pitch to Sheffield, and I think Bobby Bo can handle that because I watched the game earlier the week, and they walked Sheffield 3 times.
Well, they walked 3 times again today.
Yeah.
Snap throw to first by Klein. Back to the bag is Salmon. Sheffield only had 1 official at bat today. He's hitting 167. I think he's walked more than 10 times, though.
Yeah, and that's difficult to do, just getting 1 at bat at ball game.
Bonilla hitting behind him is hitting 308. Alou hitting behind Bonilla is hitting 400. John Smiley, the starter for Cincinnati today, walked 8. I mean, you can't walk everybody. Pitched 6 2/3 innings and walked 8. Lost the game 3-2. Collins hanging tough. 1 ball and 2 strikes to count. Garret Anderson, who's had 3 hits tonight, is on deck. The Cleveland bullpen is busy. Salmon, the runner at first. It's an 8-8 game, last of the 7th. Now he chased the bad ball, strike 3. Meanwhile, in the Cleveland bullpen, right-hander Eric Plunk started to warm up. Garret Anderson coming up now. He's had 3 hits in this ball game. 2 singles, but also in the first inning, this 2-run homer. His first home run of the year. He is now hitting better than 500 for the season. 8 ball game. Jack McDowell had a crazy night. 5 innings pitched, 8 runs, 11 hits given up. Gave up 7 of the runs in the first 2 innings. There goes the runner. Alomar. The throw is waiting, and Joe, is that a busted play?
Well, it seemed to be, but you know what was great about that is Alomar took his time. When we saw him throw the ball away on the back end of a double steal, on the front of a double steal, he rushed the throw. He came up, took his time, and made a good throw to second base. Well, you can't tell if that was a straight steal. He's looking in like it was supposed to be a hit and run. Now watch Alomar.
One ball, 1 strike now to Anderson. I think it was supposed to be a hit and run, and Anderson should have swung the bat, or Salmon thought it was supposed to be a hit and run.
Well, somebody misread it. You see, he's going. Now watch Alomar. See, he just takes his time here. When they were stealing third base early in the ballgame, he rushed, and he had plenty of time that time, and he could have saved a run. But he rushed the first time. This time, he takes his time, makes a good throw. It's hard for me to think that they would have put the hit and run on, though, with Anderson facing this guy for the first time.
2-2 the count. Well, Tim Salmon, let's see, had 4 steals last year, 5 the year before, has never had more than 5 steals in any season. 3-2 the count. 2 down, nobody on. So the Angels last year stole 53 bases as a team the whole year. 22 fewer steals than Kenny Lofton had all by himself. Well, Cleveland team.
I'm going to have to go back and agree with you. It's probably hit and run then.
But Terry Collins has preached being aggressive on the base paths. That's it. We go to the 8th inning. Top of the order. Grissom, Vizquel, and Thome coming up. It's 8-8. Hey, guys. Yeah. That's the Joe Morgan fan club out there. And there's the view from high above Anaheim Stadium. The Goodyear Blimp Eagle has been providing these aerial pictures For us, the Goodyear blimps travel over 100,000 miles every year, covering major sporting events. And there she is, the Goodyear blimp Eagle. Glad to have the blimp with us here tonight. The new pitcher is out for the Angels, left-hander Mike Holtz, H-O-L-T-Z, 24-year-old left-hander out of Clemson University. He pitched real well when he came up in the minor leagues last year. 30 games and a 2.45 ERA. 29 and a third. There you see his numbers. 29 and a third innings. Only 21 hits and only 1 home run. Top of the order, Marquise Grissom, then Omar Vizquel and Jim Thome. 8th inning. Game tied at 8. Grissom has been on base each of his last 3 trips. 2 walks and a single. Struck out his first time. Called a strike on the outside. 0-2. Grissom didn't like the call. Sandy Alomar, who nailed Tim Salmon. What may have been a busted hit-and-run play. Missed sign somewhere, perhaps. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Pep Harris went 3 1/3. Gave up a run and 5 hits. There's Salmon. Finally reached base, and then he got thrown out. Right through the legs of DeSarcina. The Angels have played such a strong game defensively tonight. And the ground ball to the shortstop right through his legs.
Well, I think if you watch it again, you see him become stationary. He waits for it. See how he's flat-footed right there, waiting for it instead of moving forward. You didn't have any movement, and when you do that, you always risk misplaying a ball. When you play flat-footed, the ball plays you instead of you going and getting the ball.
Omar Vizquel. All right, what do you think, Joe? A little hit-and-run action, bunt?
Well, I think they're going to see if Grissom can get a jump and steal his base.
Now, Grissom at one time was just a top base stealer. Stole a lot of bases, but didn't run that much in Atlanta last year.
Well, it looked like Vizquel was going to bunt. I don't think that was a bluff there, so we'll see if he continues that.
Was that a foul? I think so. 1 ball, 1 strike. One wing to the catcher, Jim Leyritz. There you see it.
Vizquel said the ball didn't hit him. Vizquel said the ball did not hit the bat. The umpire said it did.
Dale Scott ruled a foul ball. Jeff Newman, the acting manager, Mike Hargrove, of course, was thrown out earlier by Dale Scott. We're going to look at this and see if we can pick it up. Dale Scott explaining it to Newman. What do you think? Is it a foul ball? Well, you know, that shot can be deceiving.
Well, he called it a foul ball because when he waved his hands, that means the ball's out of play. It's a foul ball.
Yeah, I mean, he did call it a foul ball. No question about it. I'm just laughing because we saw the replay.
And it shocked Vizquel because he knew that he didn't butt it.
1 ball, 1 strike. And Holtz to Alicea. Well, all well that ends well. For Vizquel, he still gets the bunt down and gets his man over, which was the whole idea all along.
Except it could have been a 2-0 count, and maybe you put a hit and run on instead of a bunt.
Right. Okay.
So it could have changed, but maybe not.
Might have put the hit and run on. He might have hit a double play ball.
Right, he might have lined out. So maybe you're right. I guess the Indians are happy. They were planning on doing this anyway. 1 out with a runner at second.
But you don't like to see a foul ball called on the ball that was not within 2 feet of the bat. That's, I guess, the bottom line of what we're talking about here. Jim Thome, runner at second. It's a strike.
I think what deceived Dale Scott was he heard the tip, but it was actually a double tip when it hit the top of the glove of Jim Laris and then hit into the glove itself. I think that's what he heard.
Jim Thome with a foul. Thome has walked, struck out. He's had an RBI double, and he has singled. 2 for 3. And now you're into the power of the Cleveland Indians. We cannot see into the Angels bullpen from here, but you've got the right-handed batting slugger, Matt Williams, on deck. And then behind him, another left-handed power hitter, Dave Justice.
If you look at what they've done with this lineup, they've done a pretty good job of alternating lefty, righty, etc., so that you can't just bring one pitcher in to pitch to 2 or 3 hitters in a row.
2 strikes the count. 1 and 2.
The ideal lineup would always be that you do not stack your hitters, 2 right-handers in a row, 2 left-handers, etc. You'd have them lefty, righty, etc. on down the line, or right, left.
8-8 is the score. We're in the 8th inning. Runner at second, 1 out. 2 and 2 now. Holtz, the 3rd pitcher of the game. Now, the Angels have a very fine right-hander, a setup man named Mike James. But he has worked the last 2 days in a row, and Terry Collins told us before the game that he really feels like he needs to give James the night off tonight. Troy Percival, of course, is their great closer. And Percival, we understand, has gotten up. 3 and 2. It was 0 and 2. Now it is 3 and 2. And there's the look into the bullpen. That is Troy Percival, the flamethrower.
He doesn't need to throw anymore, does he?
Man, he just started warming up, and he's firing already. And there's Mike James giving the night off. There goes Grissom. Strike 3 called to Thome as Grissom steals 3rd. Thome very unhappy about the call. Grissom stealing 3rd on what Thome thought was ball 4. But he gets rung up.
Well, it's a breaking ball, and it's hanging up inside. And Dale Scott says strike 3.
Now Matt Williams and manager Terry Collins has gone out to the mound to talk to Holtz. They've got first base open here in a tie ball game. And the left-handed batter Justice on deck. Now, down in the Cleveland dugout, Jim Thome is, what do they call it? Venting. Venting his frustration down there. They are going to walk Matt Williams here to set up the left-hander versus left-hander. They're going to walk Matt Williams to pitch instead to Dave Justice, who this week has already hit 2 home runs against left-handers late in games, including one last night here.
Well, I guess you still go with the percentages. At least that's what Terry Collins is doing in his own mind. He says, look, percentages say I have a better chance with Holtz to get Justice out than I do Holtz with Matt Williams. So he has more pitches that he can work with to get Justice out. Whether he makes those pitches or not is going to be up to Holtz. But if he can make the pitch down and away, fastballs in, breaking balls away, he has a good chance of getting Justice out.
Well, you see, Justice has more than held his own against left-handers throughout his career.
And that's a good sign, because a lot of your good left-handed hitters will hit left-handed pitching better because they do things more fundamentally correct. They go back through the middle. They go to left field a little bit more. And against right-handed pitching, you have a tendency to want to pull the ball and go for too much. There's Larry Bohr giving instructions to Erstad at first base about how they want him to play as far as Thome is concerned.
Erstad's going to play right over behind Matt Williams.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thome's still venting.
Yeah, he's venting right now. There's a ball off the end of the bat. I don't think he got all of it. He didn't miss it by much. It's still tied at 8. Eddie Murray coming up. Eddie Murray leads it off for the Anaheim Angels. Last of the 8th inning, it's 8-8. Steve Klein the rookie, just up from Double-A, facing a man with 501 home runs right here. When Eddie Murray's big league career began, Steve Klein was still in diapers. Toward the middle, Van Hop, Fernandez stays with it and throws him out.
That's the advantage when you have a guy like Tony Fernandez playing second base. He has such good hands because he's been a shortstop, and at shortstop you have to catch the ball cleanly, and second base you can knock it down, pick him up, and throw him out. But he has such good hands and a good arm that you really get a big plus when you move a shortstop from shortstop to second base.
Tony Fernandez. One out. Now Jim Leyritz. He's 2 for 3. Got his first Angels RBI in the clutch back in the 5th inning. A 2-out single to center against McDowell, who by that time had settled in and was pitching extremely well. And that tied the game, and it has remained tied ever since. 8-8, last of the 8th. The Indians are guarding the foul lines now late in the game. That's a ball inside with a fastball from Klein. Over at third base, Matt Williams deep and right along the line. And Tomey deep and toward the line at first base. Running against the extra base hit. You see the outfield fanned out. 2-1 the count now to Leyritz. And a dangerous man in this spot, Jim Leyritz. 8-8. Well, Williams was over guarding the line, and that one went through the hole. That's the risk you take when you play that kind of a defense.
Well, you always have to give up something to get something, as you say. It's like playing for a double play. You have to play in shallow. That cuts down your range. See Williams guarding the line. He's trying to keep them from hitting a double, but in doing so, you give up the ground ball to his left. As you can see, Williams makes a valiant dive for it, but he can't come up with it.
There's Orlando Palmeiro, who has gone in at first base now to act as a runner for Jim Leyritz. Gary DiSarcina will come up. 8-8 in the last of the 8th. And DiSarcina. And the throw goes over to first. Palmeiro is back. Now the left-hander batting, Erstad, is on deck. Cleveland's bullpen is busy. But right now, the Indians are staying with the young left-hander, Steve Klein. Klein in his 3rd big league game. And Joe, maybe that's one of the reasons to keep that runner close.
Yeah, well, definitely, you know, a left-hander has a better chance in this situation.
Just because he's left-handed doesn't mean he's capable of really keeping him close.
But in most cases, most people are afraid of left-handed delivery over there. The one thing he has to do is concentrate on the hitter. On that first pitch there, he looked like he was worried about the runner at first and really didn't find the target.
Orlando Palmeiro, 1 year, stole 31 bases in the minor leagues. Last year, in 62 games at Vancouver, he stole 7 bases. So he's not what you'd call a big base stealer. And he has much better speed than does Jim Leyritz. Matt Williams playing right near the bag at third. Tomey on the bag at first. And that's a called strike. 1-1. You have to be kind of impressed with what you've seen from Klein in a tight ball game, national television. Very cool and calm out there.
Well, I like the fact that in his first inning he came in, he threw strikes, and he went right after the hitter.
1 ball, 1 strike. There's Palmeiro at first base. 8-8 the score. On the pitch, Williams bobbles it. Has to go to first in time. So safely into second is Palmeiro. That could be a huge play, a huge bobble.
Well, Williams is in tight, and he gets the ground ball. He's going to go to second, but he hits off the heel of his glove. Now he loses second base, so he has to take the runner at first base. And he does so. I think they would have had a double play had he fielded that ball cleanly. At least they'd have had a good shot.
Almost in his haste to make it all happen quickly, he ended up bobbling the ball. So now Palmeiro in scoring position. And here is Darren Erstad. He had 4 hits last night here. And tonight he's had a couple of doubles, 2 runs scored. So he's had a hot couple of days. A base hit could put the Angels ahead. The slider inside for ball 1. 8-8 in the last of the 8th. Klein has really helped his ball club regardless of the outcome, because he's given the rest of the bullpen considerable rest in this one so far. This is his third inning of work. Palmeiro at second. Fastball, a beauty. On the outside corner, strike two.
I'll tell you what, he looks like he's got good stuff. He's got a good fastball and a good breaking ball. And he throws strikes. Any left-hander that has good stuff and throws strikes is going to win in the big league.
1 ball, 1 strike. Steve Klein in the third major league game of his young career. Strike 2 call. We mentioned the state of the Cleveland bullpen and Klein's importance in giving some of the other guys a little bit of a breather tonight, because from here they go to Seattle, and they're not going to get a breather up there. They got some tough nights coming in the Kingdom for sure against that lineup. 1 ball and 2 strikes to count. 2-2. Steve Klein with a possible go-ahead run, maybe even the possible winning run. We're in the last of the 8th inning. In scoring position, Palmeiro ready to go in anything with 2 down. 2 balls, 2 strikes to count. Slow roller to short. The Gold Glover Vizquel got him at first. Klein gets through it. Nothing resolved. It's 8-8. We go to the 9th, and Kevin Mitchell is coming up. John Miller and Joe Morgan, our 8th season of Sunday Night Baseball. Cleveland 8, the Angels 8. We go to the top of the 9th here in Anaheim. Tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on ESPN 2. It's the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers from the Garden. 3 of hockey's premier superstars, Eric Lindros, Mark Messier, and the great one, Wayne Gretzky, will be in action. The Flyers and the Rangers tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN 2. Mitchell, the hitter, against Troy Percival. Percival, ordinarily the closer for the Angels. And, of course, a phenomenon. When you're the home team and it's a tie ball game in the 9th inning, there is not going to be a safe situation. So in this spot, Terry Collins is hoping Percival can shut him down for an inning, and they'll go out with their big guys coming up in the bottom of the 9th, get a run and win it. Fabregas, the new catcher. Palmeiro had come on as a runner for Leyritz. Troy Percival, this guy is all power.
This is your classic matchup, John. A power hitting Kevin Mitchell against a power pitcher like Percival. There you see he's 0 for 3 tonight. Kevin Mitchell swings a 36-inch, 36-ounce bat. So you have to get that started in a hurry to catch up with Percival.
Now keep an eye on that jugs gun reading up there. 91 miles an hour. Must have been a changeup.
Yeah, that's not what we were reading last year when we were here. He was throwing awfully hard last year a couple of times.
Well, of course, it was around this time last year, last April, we were in here in a 1-1 ball game, 9th inning. He came on, Albert Bell, in a classic duel, homered over the center field wall, and then Jim Thome homered and Sandy Alomar homered. 3 homers they hit against Percival. And there's the breaking ball.
That's a little bit unfair right there. You gear up for that 91-mile-an-hour fastball, and he breaks off that curveball on you.
Man.
And the great thing about it, as far as Percival is concerned, is that it's not a strike. I mean, he doesn't throw it for a strike, so you may have a chance of hitting it if it's in the strike zone. That breaks down and out of the strike zone. Tough chance.
That was the one Percival said afterward that he should have thrown to Albert Bell in our telecast here last April. And on 2 strikes, he got a fastball to Bell, who hit it over the wall. Now here is Giles. Percival had other problems against Cleveland last year. Other than that one we had here last August, or last April, he had 2 blown saves against them out of the 3 that he had for the whole season. Gave up 8 earned runs to them in 7 innings. The high heat, foul tip, 1 ball, 1 strike. He also gave up a home run in the 9th inning of a ball game to Manny Ramirez later last year in Cleveland to lose a ball game. Ramirez not in the game tonight, at least not so far. 8-8, 9th inning. 1 out, nobody out. 1 ball and 2 strikes now. Percival, on opening night here, had his worst nightmare realized. With 2 down and nobody on and a 3-run lead, he got wild and lost the game. Red Sox got 4 runs in the 9th inning and won that game.
Well, he struck out the first 2 hitters that night on 7 pitches. Then he had 2 strikes on all the other hitters, and he ended up walking a couple of hitters. And as you said, he lost the ball game. There's Kevin Mitchell. Not real happy tonight, but
a tough night for Mitchell. 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. 1 ball, 2 strikes to count. It's a softer curveball.
Yeah, I think it's a knuckle curve. Look like I can see his knuckles on the pitch. It looks more like. Let's see. Watch if you can see him here.
Yeah.
See it. It's a knuckle curve.
2 balls, 2 strikes to Giles. He hammers one deep into center field. Edmonds is back. Gone! A home run! Brian Giles. On this team of all-stars, of superstars. Giles, in his first start of the year, breaks the tie in the 9th inning. Remember, he had a 2-run double in the 4th inning to fuel their comeback from a 7-1 deficit. Now he has put them ahead in the 9th inning against one of baseball's best closers.
Well, he got a high fastball that was up out over the plate a little bit, and he drove it over the left center field wall. And that's interesting because Percival had just missed with that knuckle curve the pitch before.
Now here is Tony Fernandez. He is 2 for 3 with a double and an RBI. Check swing foul.
Fastball, and it's up and out over the plate. Now watch him. I mean, just good extension right there. And he just drilled it.
Yeah, and that's what his teammates saw too. And the celebration began. Popped up. Shortstop, D. Sarcina. Number 2, Fernandez is gone. In the Angels half of the 9th inning, the hitters due up are Luis Alicea, and then the power hitters Jim Edmonds and Tim Salmon. So they got the big guys coming up in the last half of the 9th inning. And the Cleveland bullpen is busy. Steve Klein, the rookie, has given Cleveland 3 strong innings, allowing no runs on only 1 hit. But now they have the lead. Here's Sandy Alomar. The curveball is too low. Mike Jackson, veteran right-hander, is warming up out there. Looks like somebody else might be out there too. There's Brian Giles. Ball back out of play. Giles is originally from Southern California, born in El Cajon, 26 years old. And when he was called up from the American Association last year, he had already hit 20 homers with a .314 average. And then in 51 games with Cleveland, he hit .355. A lot of teams would like to have him, and we can all see why right now. There was one report, Joe, before Curt Schilling was signed, that Giles and Albie Lopez have been offered to Philadelphia for Schilling. That's a strike. 1 and 2. Paul Asemacher is the other pitcher warming up in the Cleveland bullpen. Paul Shuey has worked 2 days in a row, and Hargrove really wanted to give him a night off. Shuey is sort of the closer right now, with Jose Mesa standing trial back in Cleveland. 2 and 2. And Hargrove had said before the game that if it came into a close type situation, he might try to match him up, lefty-righty. So he's got both Jackson and Asemacher heating up. 9-8, Cleveland ahead. A game which the Angels once led 7-1. This would be a bitter, bitter defeat for the Angels. There's a shot. Deep into the night. Wow. 10-8 for Cleveland. Sandy Alomar, as he did a year ago when we were here, takes Percival deep.
Well, it doesn't matter how hard you throw it if it's not moving. And apparently, Percival's fastball is looking a little straight the early part of the season. There's the fastball.
Boom.
And Alomar gets all of it.
It sounded like an explosion, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Marquise Grissom now. And he takes a strike. Grissom has been on base 4 straight times. 2 walks, a single. And then he reached on an error by D. Sarcina in the 8th inning. And he has a steal tonight. Now, you know, Joe, I mean, throughout this time, we're not seeing the reading on that Judge gun with Percival that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, you're right.
91's a little different than 98, 99.
Big difference.
1-2. Sandy Alomar, he homered deep down the left field line here last night. Goes deep into left center tonight. Alomar is off to a real fast start this year. He's only had 17 at-bats for the year, and he's got 3 home runs. Percival had some trouble this spring. Some back problems kept him out for a while. Then he also had a problem related to too much caffeine and nicotine. And the doctors told him to cut back. Base hit on the slider. Grissom, who had only 1 hit all year, has 2 hits tonight. That one shot right back at Percival.
Well, it's a breaking ball. This is a curveball, and it's down. There's a knuckle curve down and away. Not a bad pitch. Grissom goes down, gets it, and lines it back through the middle, and Percival decides he better get out of the way.
Good idea.
Smart play.
Marcel Latzman, the pitching coach, out to talk to him. So here in Anaheim, if you're an Angels fan, this is a matter of serious concern.
Yes, it is.
I mean, this guy was almost as close as there was to being automatic. He comes in, game's over. Now twice this week. The first week of the season, he's gotten roughed up. Don't forget now, right after the ball game, it will be Sports Center with Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick. A complete recap of the day in Major League Baseball, the NBA playoff push, and the NASCAR Texas debut. All of that and more on Sports Center right after the game. Now we got time checking this. Omar Vizquel is at the plate. And Marquise Grissom's having a little problem over there at first base. Dave Nelson, the coach, is over there with him.
Well, he's had a problem all night running, John, because that ball there, I thought he was going to try to get a double out of it, but he didn't, and the ball he popped down the right field line, he didn't run into a double. So obviously something is bothering him, and they're going to pinch run for him.
So Grissom leaves the field with Paul Spacuzza, the trainer. And there is Chad Curtis, the longtime Angel, now former Angel, in to run. Omar Vizquel is the hitter. And that's foul. See, there we go again. 91 miles an hour on the fastball now. That's not the overpowering, exploding fastball that we've seen in the past from Percival. Vizquel tonight is 1 for 4. He singled home a run back in the 4th inning. He's had a sacrifice bunt. There goes Curtis. The ball is fouled off the left field line. 0-2.
When Grissom hit the ball back through the middle, it was actually in the right center field right there, so it looked like he had a chance for a double, and with 2 outs, you usually try to stretch it. But see, right there, you see all of a sudden something's bothering him, and if I had to bet, I'd say it's his back, because he doesn't grab his leg or slow up. His legs continue to go, but I think it probably is his back.
2 strikes to Vizquel. And that's foul. Down the left field line. 10-8, the Cleveland Indians. 2 home runs here in the 9th inning. Brian Giles hit the first one to break the tie, and then Sandy Alomar added one. 2 of the 3 home runs for Cleveland in this game. The Indians have hit 11 home runs in the first 5 games of the season. The Angels have also had 2 home runs tonight. Edmonds and Anderson both went deep in the very first inning of the game. Like 2 different, you feel like we've been into a doubleheader tonight. There's Brian Giles. Looked like he was going to be at least part of a platoon in left field to replace Albert Bell until the trade for Grissom and Justice was made. And it seems now that he might be trade bait to try and get a starting pitcher if later on they feel like they really have to go out and get one. 0-2 the count to Vizquel. Pitch out. Throw to first by Fabregas, but Curtis is back in.
First of all, with his high leg kick, he does not hold runners that well, and that he gives them time to run. Anytime you're a power pitcher, you pretty much have to get your body in position to throw hard, and you have to have a pretty high leg kick.
There goes Curtis, and it's a foul. Into the crowd in a hurry. Well, the world champion Yankees come in here next for the Angels. Tough first homestand for this California ball club. Boston, followed by Cleveland, and then the Yankees. That's a tough 8 games to start the year with. Troy Percival. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Vizquel really battled it out with him here. He's lost at least 2 bats now. 2 bats have been destroyed. There goes Curtis. Shallow right. Salmon. Base hit. Curtis is into third. The real tough part of all this for Terry Collins is that Percival's starting to throw so many pitches now. He might need him tomorrow to close the game with the Yankees. That was quite an at-bat there by Vizquel.
Well, you see the runner break. Tad Curtis breaks. It's a little blooper in the right field. Salmon comes on, but then he realizes he's not going to get there. And instead of making an attempt and letting the ball bounce past him, he chooses to hold the runner at first and keep the runner at third, which is a smart play.
Now Jim Thome. Thome is 2 for 4 with a walk tonight. A double and a run batted in. No strikes. Nice save there by Fabregas. 10 runs and 15 hits for the Cleveland Indians. 2 errors, which came with the same play. 8 runs, 12 hits, and 1 error for the Angels. Look at that. The last 2 years, he's allowed 6 homers in 7 2/3 innings to Cleveland hitters. Ooh.
That tells you the Cleveland hitters are pretty good fastball hitters.
2-0 the count. That's 29 pitches thrown by Percival in this inning. The right-handed batting Matt Williams is on deck. There is Curtis, the pinch runner, at third base. Omar Vizquel at first base. Erstad on the bag with him. 3 balls, no strikes to count to Jim Thome.
Thome was hitting 3-0 in the second at bat. He's swinging 3-0 again. Actually doubled on a 3-0 pitch to drive in the run in the fourth inning.
One of those early innings.
Yeah, the 4th.
That was the inning where Cleveland, which had been trailing 7-1, scored 7 runs to go ahead. 8-7. The Angels tied the ball game in the 5th inning on a Layrit single, 8-8. It stayed tied until the Giles homer here in the 9th. And the bases are loaded. The walk to Thome. Now we're talking about Percival and the disastrous ball game on opening night last Wednesday. Bases loaded with 2 down on Wednesday night. Tim Naring was the hitter as he tried to wrap it up, and he walked him. And then he walked Cordero after that. It was 5-4. And then Rudy Pemberton was hit by a pitch to tie the game. Finally, they got Percival out of there after the Red Sox tied it. And the Red Sox got a base hit against Pep Harris to go ahead 6-5 and won the game. Troy O'Leary got the winning hit. And Percival took the loss, which just was astonishing to Angels fans to see that happen to Percival. The bases are loaded. Here is Matt Williams. Ball 1. Well, more and more now we've seen Percival turn himself into a breaking ball pitcher in this inning.
Well, I think he realizes that they're on his fastball, so he's going to try something different. But he doesn't actually have good enough control, John, of his breaking ball to be a breaking ball pitcher.
Curtis, Vizquel, and Thome, you saw the base runners all ready to go in anything with 2 down. There's the fastball, a soaring fly ball to left. Will stay in the park. So another nightmare for Percival. 2 in the same week for him. Brian Giles breaks the tie in the 9th inning with a home run to left center. And then later, Sandy Alomar also went deep. It's 10-8 for Cleveland. We go to the last of the 9th. Brian Giles going deep to put the Cleveland Indians ahead. Giles in his first start of the year, as Mike Hargrove wanted to get him some at-bats. Manny Ramirez took the night off, and Brian Giles responded with a 2-run double in the 4th as part of their 7-run inning, and then a tie-breaking home run of the 9th. And there is Paul Assenmacher, the veteran left-hander, who faced the switch-hitting Alicea. Chad Curtis stays in the ball game to play center field after coming on as a runner for Grissom. Alicea bats right-handed now, takes a strike. On deck is the left-handed batting Jim Edmonds. Now earlier we saw Mike Jackson, a right-hander, up in the bullpen. So after Alicea and Edmonds, you've got the right-handed batting Tim Salmon coming up. So Assenmacher may well be in there just for these 2 hitters.
Well, if no one gets on base, I think they may leave him in there to pitch to Salmon. But he's not going to let Salmon be the tying run and have Assenmacher pitch to him.
1 ball and 2 strikes. Well, this Cleveland bullpen figured to be a real strength. I mean, they've got a lot of experience out there with guys like Mike Jackson, Eric Plunk, Assenmacher. They've got the flamethrowers like Paul Shuey, who's acting as the closer in the absence of Jose Mesa, Albie Lopez, and tonight we saw Steve Klein, the guy who wasn't supposed to be in that bullpen, but sort of forced his way onto the staff with a great spring. And of course the trade of Alan Embry to Atlanta helped that happen as well. Embry going to Atlanta with Lofton in that big deal. And Klein tonight, man, what a performance. 3 innings, no runs, 1 hit. Looked like he'd been around for years. Down on strikes, as Ali said. More baseball on ESPN. Wednesday night baseball, the doubleheader. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. The red-hot Houston Astros with Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio taking on Chipper Jones and the Atlanta Braves at Turner Field in Atlanta. And then the world champion Yankees, Bernie Williams and company, right here in Anaheim against Tim Salmon. Jim Edmonds and the California Angels at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific.
Tell you what, Assenmacher is throwing very hard. I don't remember him throwing quite this hard, but I guess because he pitches against a lot of left-handers, he uses his breaking ball a lot more. But he's got a good pop on that fastball, good movement as well.
1-2 the count to Edmonds. Edmonds way late on it. Edmonds with a 2-run homer in the first, a sacrifice fly in the second, but he has struck out twice since then. Cleveland 10, the Angels 8. Cleveland getting ready to head to Seattle. It'll be a Powerball for the Oakland A's. Messages for the year with Canseco, McGuire, all the sluggers they've got. Cleveland going to the Kingdome for 3 days. That should be wild. 1 ball, 2 strikes to count. Probably end up with the games will end up being like 3-2.
I was going to say, just when you expect that, it'd be 3-2, 2-1.
Here's Brian Giles. Still with the Indians. Without a job. His 9th inning homer, and that man, Sandy Alomar, also went deep. And Edmonds goes down. There's the breaking ball. So Assenmacher with back-to-back strikeouts. 2 down. Coming up now, right after the ball game, Sports Center. The full day of baseball highlights. NBA playoff pushes on. NASCAR. In Texas, the debut. Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick will have the story. From all of that and more on Sports Center. Well, we are going to get a change here. 2 down and nobody on. Salmon coming up, and it will be Mike Jackson to come on. He'll try and get one of those one-batter saves. It's not over yet. We'll be back. Sunday Night Baseball. Our first game of the year. Cleveland ahead 10-8 in a wild night here in Anaheim. Mike Jackson now comes on with 2 down. Try and wrap it up. If you're looking for Sports Center, it'll be coming along right after the end of the ball game. Jackson, one of the premier relievers, never really as a closer. Tonight, an exception, but always tough to hit,
especially on right-handed hitters. I mean, he has an excellent slider, a couple of different types of sliders, good fastball. I said earlier, at opening day that I thought Seattle was going to miss him because last year down the stretch it was Mike Jackson and Norm Charlton, and he has always been an excellent setup man. He's a big setup man for Rod Beck in San Francisco, Charlton in Seattle, and now he's going to be a setup man for Mesa if he gets back.
Jim Salmon, and of course Salmon cannot tie the game. Down by 2 runs. He has struck out 3 times and walked in this game. 10-8 Cleveland. Next Sunday night, we will be in St. Louis. The Cardinals and the Astros. 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Strike 2 to Salmon. Cleveland Indians. It's been a momentous first week out here of the schedule. They've had game after game, much like tonight. Slugging it out. And Cleveland they can slug it out with anybody. You get into a game where you slug it out with Cleveland, good luck to you.
Yeah, you're right. And I really think that a lot of these guys are going to get better. I think Matt Williams is going to get better as he adjusts to the American League. David Justice. They're all going to, and Grissom, they're all going to adjust and be a little better. It's interesting, it was Grissom had a right hamstring instead of his back. I thought it was didn't look like he was limping with his leg, but maybe that's better than being a bad back.
Check swing. And it is 1-2. Yeah, Marquise Grissom, the report from the clubhouse is that he suffered a right hamstring strain. 1 ball, 2 strikes to Tim Salmon. Dave Hollins on deck. Struck him out. The 4th strikeout of the night for Salmon. And the Cleveland Indians, well, this is Cleveland Indians baseball. Jack McDowell struggles terribly. They take him off the hook, and then they win the ball game. Cleveland 10-8 over the Angels. Klein, the rookie, gets the win. He earned it. John Miller for Joe Morgan. We'll see you next Sunday night from St. Louis with the Cardinals and the Astros. Now, from Anaheim, good night, everyone.